Chapter 3086. In any case, I don't want you to be my sister-in-law. After that, I ran home. I held on to Grandma's hand and kept asking. However, Grandma only thought that I had a deep sibling relationship with Dongyu and treated it as child's talk. Hence, she smiled and said, "All right, if Xiaochuan wants to be with Dongyu, then so be it. In the future, our Xiaochuan will marry Dongyu and be his wife. Grandma will keep her word and make the decision for you." I was relieved to hear this. From then on, because of Dongyu, my relationship with Menglan fell into an ice cellar and I completely cut off all contact with the other children. Wherever Dongyu went, I followed him like a little tail. At that time, it was as if there was a wall that separated us from the rest of the world. However, every time I dreamed in the middle of the night, Menglan's words echoed in my mind like an oath. I felt indignant and hugged Dongyu's neck tightly until he woke up from his dream. In his sleepy state, he caressed my cheek. "What's wrong? Brother, will you be with another girl in the future?" Menglan said that she wants to marry you in the future and be your wife and my sister-in-law. Under the moonlight, I could vaguely see him frown. The young me was so uneasy. I choked and pleaded, "Brother, I don't want you to get married. I don't want you to be with another girl. Can you be with me? 100 years, a lifetime together." Dongyu didn't speak. After a moment of silence, he hugged me tighter and whispered in my ear. "What if I don't live for 100 years? No matter how many years it takes, we have to be together," I said with a pout. In the darkness, I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only heard him smile. "All right, we'll be together forever." I was overjoyed. I couldn't help but hold his face and kiss his warm, thin lips. Dongyu grabbed my little hand and responded to my pure kiss. It was a tender kiss, just lips against each other. There was no finesse to it, but it stirred my heart. At that time, we were young and had no concept of the relationship between a man and a woman, nor did we understand the meaning of such an intimate kiss. However, until a long, long time later, I still didn't understand why I wanted him so much. I asked myself this question more than once, but there was no answer. Later, I thought, who asked him to spoil me so much? He spoiled me so much that I was out of control. With this kind of spoiling, it seemed that other people's love couldn't be considered love anymore. At the end of the day, I was just a spoiled child. As I grew older, my personality became like Dongyu's for a long time. Gradually, I became cold to others and became not good at socializing. I didn't even like to get close to others. It seemed that only Dongyu could affect my emotions. Whether I was happy or sad, it seemed to only concern him. Slowly, I reached the age of going to school. I went to the same school as Dongyu. I'm in the 1st grade and he's in the 4th. When I first picked up the textbook and smelled the fragrance of the books, I felt like I had been locked in a huge cage, and the world before me was gray. I was surrounded by an unfamiliar environment, unfamiliar people, unfamiliar faces, and unfamiliar voices. Without Dongyu, I became unhappy. I became depressed. I even ignored the friendliness of my classmates. I didn't even want to talk to them. Chapter 3087. Thinking back to those years, throughout my entire academic life, I must have been a very reclusive person in the eyes of my classmates. After such a long time, I've long gotten used to the world of the two of us. It's probably because I've been used to spending time with Dongyu since I was young. Without him by my side, whenever a stranger invades, I subconsciously arm myself. During that period of youth, I was too quiet in class. During class, I would look down at my textbook. After class, I would look out the window. Amidst the noisy fighting, I would stare silently at the window in a daze. On the 2nd floor of the opposite building was Dongyu's classroom, which was opposite my class. Dongyu would also lean against the windowsill and quietly look at me. Even if we couldn't talk, we still enjoyed it. Hence, the few minutes of break between classes became the time I yearned for the most. The day's classes became the most unbearable sea for me. Hence, when the school bell rang, I suddenly felt alive and beautiful. The fourth grade class often ended very late, and mine ended early. Hence, I liked to tiptoe and lean against the windowsill, shaking my head as I waited for him. Over time, the people in Dongyu's class became familiar with me and would even tease me. Sometimes, when I got bored of waiting, would do somersaults in the corridor outside the classroom. I even did a handstand. I would often fall and knock my head, but I never got tired of it. However, I didn't want to make Dongyu anxious. Every time I fell while doing a handstand, he would immediately stand up. Once, when I went overboard, the teacher rushed out aggressively with a ruler. He pointed at me and lectured, "Which class's child is so restless? We're still in class. Hurry up and go home." I was stunned by the scolding. Pinching the corner of my shirt, I said aggrievedly, "Teacher, I'm waiting for my brother to go home." The teacher turned to look inside the classroom and asked angrily in a low voice, "What's your brother's name?" I immediately shut my mouth, not wanting to betray Dongyu. However, a thin figure stood up quietly near the window. "Teacher Shui, she's my sister." Dongyu's tone was calm and unruffled. Teacher Shui's teaching style was famous in town for being strict and dignified. At that time, there was no such thing as a harmonious teacher-student relationship. Corporal punishment was common. Naturally, Dongyu didn't end well for himself. Teacher Shui swung the ruler and slapped him hard on the shoulder a few times, then punished him by making him stand at the door of the classroom. His school bag was also mercilessly thrown out, but he was not allowed to pick it up. I had never seen such a detestable teacher. I was dumbfounded. I stared blankly at the books all over the floor and cried out in sadness. Dongyu looked at me and laughed helplessly, pretending not to care. "I'm bored in class. Your homeroom teacher is so fierce." I secretly spoke ill of his teacher. He smiled and said, "The senior students have to change their form teacher. If you're not paying attention in class, you'll be punished severely." I was scared and shrunk my shoulders. After class, the students filed out. Some of them didn't pay attention to their feet and stepped on Dongyu's textbook until the pages were torn. Only a few girls carefully moved the textbook away from the teacher's sight. Without old Shui's approval, no one dared to help. Chapter 3088. At the time, I didn't know that his shoulder had already been bruised by those few strokes. I just cried silently. There was frustration, hatred for old Shui, and heartache for Dongyu. After that incident, I didn't go to his class to disturb him again. Instead, I waited obediently at the school gate for his class to end. I thought that after that, without me causing a ruckus at the entrance of Dongyu's class, it must have been much quieter. Since he was young, Dongyu had been very popular with girls. This phenomenon didn't change even when he was in school. However, he wasn't close to girls, and his daily interactions with them were distant. However, perhaps it was his cold aura that attracted many girls to him. Or perhaps, in terms of appearance, he was especially outstanding in school. His handsome face was indeed an asset. He often received a table full of gifts and love letters, as well as cards that were popular at the time. Those girls were especially interesting. Apart from the love letters with delicate handwriting, there were also pencils, erasers, rulers, compasses, drawing boards. There were even comic books, cartoon cards, toys, and all kinds of strange gifts. Most of the time, Dongyu contributed them to the rubbish bin. Sometimes, when I realized that there was something I was particularly interested in among the gifts and wanted to take it, Dongyu would stop me and willingly throw it away. I was a little puzzled. "Since they gave it to you, why did you throw it away?" Dongyu smiled and replied lightly, "If I don't throw it away, I'm afraid of being misunderstood." I didn't really understand what he meant. Every time after school, I would wait for him at the school gate to go home together, regardless of whether it was morning or evening. When we got home, I would often pester him to carry me on his back. He would never refuse. Every time this happened, he would lovingly scratch my nose and squat down. "Come on up, little sloth." I happily lay on his back and hugged his shoulders. I felt so smug that it was as if I was sitting on a hydrogen balloon and flying high into the sky. Just as he said, I was famous for being a little sloth. When I got home from school, I threw my bag on the bed and lay on the sofa. I stretched my limbs and refused to move. I didn't like to study, nor was I good at schoolwork. Homework was even more of a headache. Hence, when I couldn't finish my homework every day, he could only do it for me. He was angry and helpless at the same time. He asked me, will I still have to worry about my homework when I enter university? Coming back to the topic, he smiled again and said, I think with my level, I might not be able to go to university. I pouted and changed the topic. Brother, don't you want to go to a university? No. No. Now is not the time to think about university aspirations. I imitated his tone and said, it's not the time for you to worry about whether I can get into university or not. Dong-yu was stunned by my words. After a long while, he stroked my head. Yes, eldest miss. But in reality? I'm not stupid, I'm just not motivated. Or maybe at that time, I didn't have the heart to study and my head was full of playful thoughts, but I didn't fall behind in my homework. Because when Dong-yu was doing my homework for me, I was always by his side. As I watched, I got the gist of it. His favorite childhood season was summer. Especially during the summer holidays. Chapter 3089. In the fields and wheat fields, I always found a way to exhaust my energy. Finally, as the sun set, I reluctantly took Dong-yu's hand and set off home. Dong-yu and I each had a bicycle. Dong-yu's bicycle was a giant given to him by his father on his 11th birthday. At that time, it cost a few hundred yuan each. Ordinary people would shrink back at such a price. As for my ride, it was the one Dong-yu rode when he was young. There were two small wheels on both sides of the rear wheel to balance it out. When I was riding it, my father removed the two small wheels. After cleaning them, they looked like new again. Look, each of us has a bicycle. Shechuan, haven't you been clamoring for a bicycle? Here. I'll let you ride Dong-yu's bicycle, okay? Sure. I didn't feel aggrieved at all. Instead, I treated Dong-yu's bicycle like a treasure. During the summer vacation, he and I would each have a bicycle. Under the scorching sun, we would ride our bicycles in the wind. The other children were envious of us. At that time, as we rode our bicycles, a group of children chased after us enviously, looking at us curiously. It felt so good. Everyone liked the feeling of being envied and yearned for. Especially as Dong-yu's younger sister, I felt a sense of self-satisfaction. When we got hot from riding, we would park the bicycle at home. The two of us would hold hands and go to the small supermarket in town to buy a popsicle. We didn't spend much every day. 2 yuan was just enough for each of us to buy a popsicle. However, I was a greedy little cat. When I came across something I liked, I ate it especially quickly. In no time, I had licked the popsicle clean. At this point, Dong-yu had only taken a bite out of the popsicle in his hand. Every time this happened, I would put on an aggrieved expression and look at him eagerly, staring at the popsicle in his hand. Why did you eat it so quickly? Because I'm afraid it'll melt. Dong-yu would always be amused by my various excuses. Hence, the two of us shared a popsicle. You took a bite, I took a bite, and his popsicle was completely digested. The days of youth were always nostalgic. At that time, I never thought that such a carefree life would quietly change after Dong-yu was admitted to junior high school. Dong-yu and I went to primary school in our hometown. Back then, family planning was prevalent. My birth was outside the system. With Dong-yu, there shouldn't be me. My existence is entirely due to an accident. When Dong-yu was 2 years old, perhaps my parents couldn't help themselves and accidentally gave birth to me. Logically speaking, they should have aborted me, but my mother couldn't bear to do it. After all, I was her own flesh and blood. Hence, after much discussion, she ran back to the countryside and secretly gave birth to me. When she was pregnant, my mother had a big belly and had to hide from place to place. After giving birth to me, she hid me at my grandmother's house. In order to avoid the family planning commission, I didn't register until later and was eligible to enroll. Even so, his family still paid a hefty price. Later, Dong-yu graduated from primary school. In the year of his junior high school entrance examination, Dong-yu lived up to everyone's expectations and got into a key junior high school in the city. Chapter 3090. It was my first time stepping into a brand new apartment building. It was my first time seeing an elevator. The small but exquisite 3 rooms and 2 living rooms were filled with novelty. I felt uneasy, but at the same time, I felt an inexplicable sense of anticipation. This way, the family of 4 could be reunited. When I was in primary school, although my parents often came back, they weren't always by my side, so it was inevitable that we would feel distant. But everything in the city was new. After moving to the city, I quickly got used to it. But the only thing I wasn't used to was, Dong-yu and I were sleeping in separate rooms. Dong-yu, you're all grown up. You're going to be a big boy soon. You can't sleep with your sister anymore. Mother lectured us seriously. In the past, it might not have been a big deal for you to sleep in the same bed. But now, Dong-yu is in junior high school and is already 13 years old. You're 10 years old. It's time to try to be independent. Chun-chun, you'll sleep alone in your room tonight. It was almost an order, and there was no room for refusal. I looked at her blankly, uneasy about sleeping alone. I don't want to. I immediately shook my head like a broken drum and hugged Dong-yu tightly, refusing to let go. I don't want to sleep in separate rooms from my brother. This is outrageous. Father muttered at the side, he's not a child anymore. Dong-yu is already so old, how can he keep sleeping in the same bed as you? What does that look like? At that time, I didn't understand why they had to split us up this way. Because back in my hometown, Dong-yu and I had always slept in the same bed and slept on the same bed. I was used to sleeping with him in my arms. I definitely wasn't used to sleeping alone. But how would I know then? Dong-yu was 13 years old, at the age of puberty. This puberty didn't just refer to the development of height, weight, and vocal cords. It was the most important part of a teenager's development, sexual development. My understanding of this was zero. Hence, I didn't understand why Mother was so insistent on sleeping in separate rooms. On the night we slept in separate rooms, I lay on the bed, hugging the blanket, but tears kept falling. My imagination was surprisingly rich. Without Dong-yu by my side, I couldn't help but let my imagination run wild. I kept having the feeling that there was a face outside the window and a person hiding under the bed. Outside the crack in the door, there seemed to be someone eyeing us covetously. It was as if he was besieged on all sides. Trapped in the fear of the dark night, I didn't even dare to stretch my feet out of the bed. I was afraid that there would be a hand under the bed that would grab my feet at any moment and drag me into the endless abyss of hell. In the end, I cried, feeling wronged. I muttered to myself, why is my mother so cruel? So cruel. Then, he fell asleep in a daze. The next few days were even more miserable. Before going to bed, after my mother left, I couldn't wait to turn on the lights. It was as if the strange evil spirits would retreat as soon as I turned on the lights. I don't know where such a stupid idea came from. The world of children is always so naive. Of course, turning on the lights to sleep gave him some peace of mind. But the next day, his mother would always find out that he didn't turn off the lights to sleep, and then he would be severely reprimanded. One night, I tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep. So I tiptoed into Dong-yu's room. Chapter 3091. At that moment, a great sense of security welled up in my heart. I walked to his bed and squatted down gently. I lay quietly by the bed and looked at him. I felt a great sense of peace. However, I only dared to lie down like this. I didn't dare to get on the bed for fear of alerting him. I didn't know how long I had been like this until midnight. Dong-yu was woken up by the sound of a wild cat outside the window. She turned over and seemed to have heard my shallow breathing. She opened her eyes and saw me. He was a little surprised. Why aren't you in your room? When I heard this, I cried aggrievedly and said, "There's a ghost in my room." "I'm scared," Dong-yu was stunned. The moonlight shone through the windowsill, and I could clearly see his amused expression. "Silly, where did the ghost come from?" "I'm scared. I keep feeling like there's a ghost under the bed, outside the window, and outside the door. It's like countless pairs of eyes are staring at me, watching me." Dong-yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry at my exaggerated description. However, he naturally knew that it was a waste of time to debate these supernatural matters with me. Hence, I saw him smile and make way for me. I was stunned. Seeing that I was still in a daze, he asked playfully, "Do you want to squat here all night?" "Of course not." He gently patted the empty space with his hand, looking a little helpless. "Come up and sleep." I was a little worried and embarrassed. "If Mom wakes you up in the morning and sees me sleeping in the same bed as you, she'll definitely scold me again." Dong-yu didn't think much of it. "You're so mischievous. Haven't you been scolded enough?" When I heard this, I felt that it made sense. Hence, I nimbly climbed onto the bed. Dong-yu covered me with the blanket and said reproachfully, "Mom is right. We're all grown up. We can't sleep in the same bed anymore." "Why?" I was puzzled. "Isn't it good to be like before?" I turned around and saw a strange expression on his face. He seemed to be avoiding it. He only said lightly, "I'll wake you up early tomorrow morning. Before they wake up, go back to your room." "Then, what about in the future?" I smiled mischievously. "In the future, just like today, I'll sneak into your room and sleep with you. Then, I'll go back to my room in the morning." "Sleep early." He still didn't answer my question directly. Instead, he patted my head gently and hugged me to sleep. I looked up and saw his closed eyes. Her long eyelashes were closed quietly, dark and thick. I hugged him back and slept soundly the entire night. However, in the morning, the pain of getting out of bed came. After Dong-yu woke me up, he chased me back to my room. I got up reluctantly, feeling like I was made of iron and the bed was made of magnets. Dong-yu was getting anxious. As he mumbled, he groped his way back to his room. In the morning, the sky was already bright. Of course, I wasn't afraid of those monsters. I lay on the bed and slept soundly. From then on, at night, after my parents were asleep, Dong-yu would come to my room. Just like when they were young, the two of them slept on the same bed and under the same blanket, hugging each other to sleep. Chapter 3092. During the junior high school entrance exam, my mother filled in the application form for me with her eyes closed. She was ambitious. With a stroke of her pen, she filled in the second key junior high school in the city for me. At that time, only students with excellent grades were qualified to take the school selection exam. I did not disappoint. When I was in the 6th grade, I worked a little harder. The so-called hard work was just listening attentively in class, and my grades improved by leaps and bounds. I actually came in first in the class for the primary school graduation exam. Many people's eyes popped out of their sockets. I successfully brought home the school selection application form. My mother was so shocked that she almost lost her footing. During dinner, my father kept lamenting that I had a smart brain, but I was too lazy in my studies. With excellent results in the school selection exam, I received the acceptance letter without any suspense. Throughout the summer vacation, I was instantly promoted from a servant to a princess. In the past, when I was not doing well in my studies, my mother would instruct me to do housework. She said that girls had to learn to do it sooner or later. If I didn't do well in my studies, I wouldn't be able to do much in the future. Hence, from a young age, she had to train me. When I heard this, I didn't think much of it. I thought that my future would be limitless. However, even though I received the acceptance letter, I still felt a little regretful. Because that year, Dong-yu received the acceptance letter from a key provincial high school. We were separated by 3 years, but it felt like we were separated by an entire youth. Some people say that junior high school is the starting point of a teenager's journey. Many of the first awakening of love and many of the young and inexperienced memories began here. During the summer vacation after I graduated from primary school, I often fantasized about what junior high school would be like. At that time, there were many teen idol dramas with school backgrounds on the television. Hence, I began to wonder if school life in real life would be like those scenes in those idol dramas. Of course, this idea was completely disillusioned in the first week of junior high school when I was faced with a thick stack of homework. The so-called youth had probably been strangled alive in piles of exercise books. Why is there so much homework? Every time I got home, I threw my heavy bag on the sofa and couldn't help but grumble. I don't even know what the teachers for the various subjects look like, but there's a thick stack of all kinds of exercise books. Dongyu passed by and gently hit me on the head with the newspaper in his hand. There will be more in the future. At that time, he was already a first-year high school student. Every time he returned home, his homework would be spread out on the table, and it would always be a spectacular sight. Now, it's finally my turn to have a taste of it. Dongyu. I whined. Before I could beg him, he said coldly, "Don't expect me to do your homework for you." After junior high school, I couldn't spend every moment with Dongyu. The days of sitting by the window and being able to see him whenever she turned her head in elementary school were long gone. Fortunately, our schools weren't far from each other. I would sneak into his school after school ended early. The school he was studying at was a provincial high school, so it was heavily guarded. However, there was a wall at the back of the field. It wasn't very high, so I could climb over it. His classes ended late, so I would wander around his school. The library, the music room, the playground, and even the teacher's office. Chapter 3093. In that era, the control over the students was extremely strict. The so-called school bell, class bell, and department bell were not something that the current university bell could compare to. Middle school and high school were strict about makeup and hair dye. Even a tuft of fringe was not allowed to cover one's eyes. Boys had short hair that could not cover their ears and eyebrows. It was best to have a uniform buzz cut. What about girls? They couldn't have disheveled hair and had to wear it in a ponytail. It was best to have a clean face and not have an extra strand of hair between one's eyebrows. It was refreshing. Therefore, the girls who were called the school belle at that time were all natural. When I was in middle school, I couldn't say that I was unparalleled in beauty, but my watery eyes, clear black and white, delicate oval face, red lips, and white teeth, my pretty face did cause me a lot of trouble. For example, if I was watching someone play basketball, I didn't know who I had offended, but this huge basketball would fly towards me for no reason and hit me on the forehead. At that time, I couldn't see through the good intentions behind this accident, nor did I know that the ball was coming from a calculated angle. I was secretly glad that the angle of the basketball was humane and didn't hit my nose. Otherwise, my nose bridge would have been broken. Even so, when it hit my forehead, it hurt so much that tears immediately fell from my eyes. At that time, a delicate-looking young man walked toward me. I covered my forehead and looked up at him, only to see the culprit, with his hands on his hips and a mischievous smile on his face. "I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." He didn't apologize sincerely, but his eyes were full of viciousness. My first meeting with Su Chi was an accident in my life. At that time, girls didn't have so many strange nicknames for the school belle they admired like now. Little Fresh Meat, National Hubby, Peerless Beauty, none of them. There was only one highest praise a girl could give a boy, and that was the school belle. Other than the self-proclaimed school belle, there were only two recognized in number 1 high school. One was In Dongyu, and the other was Su Chi. He had a very clean face without any impurities. His fair skin added a lot to his sunny and handsome temperament. It's a pity that I'm not one of those love-struck girls. Otherwise, I'd definitely be mesmerized by this handsome boy at first glance. His devilish smile and frown would definitely be mesmerized. Seeing that his apology wasn't sincere, I got angry and stood up. I picked up my bag and was about to leave. He immediately grabbed my hand from behind, his expression a little awkward. "You're injured. I'll take you to the infirmary." "No need." "Really?" He walked in front of me, glanced at my forehead, and frowned. It's already broken. If it's not treated in time, it'll probably leave a scar. When I heard this, I was really shocked. Ignoring his intentions, I said awkwardly, "It won't take long to treat the wound, right? I'm still waiting for someone." Seeing my compromise, he smiled, showing his white teeth. "It won't take long." He turned around and returned the basketball amidst the whistling of the crowd. Then, he took me to the infirmary after greeting everyone. In the infirmary, I sat on the bed a little uneasily. The health teacher wasn't around. He found the first aid kit and walked over to clean my wound. Chapter 3094. Only then did I size him up formally. He had a head of black hair and delicate facial features. His hair was close to his ears, and there was a diamond stud on his ear. It was especially popular at the time. If one were to evaluate his looks fairly, he would definitely be considered outstanding among the students. Coupled with his height of 1.8 meters, he should be very popular among the girls. As he treated my wound, he asked, "Judging from your school uniform, you're not a student from First High School?" "Yes. I'm waiting for someone after school." "Oh. Waiting for your boyfriend?" he asked half jokingly, half tentatively. I snorted. "What does that have to do with you?" Probably because he had never met a girl who spoke to him like that, he found it extremely novel. "You're so funny. Why don't we be friends? My name is Sue Chi." "What about you? You want to be friends with me, but I don't think you're sincere at all." I said that just to reject him in disguise. But he seemed to have misunderstood me. The next second, I saw him move closer to me. He held my chin with his hand and kissed me gently on the lips. "Is this considered sincere?" I stared at him in surprise. It took me 5 seconds to react. I had been kissed. I didn't know what kind of boy Sue Chi used to be. Later, I heard my brother mention that he was the school hunk in high school. He had a pure appearance, fair skin, clear eyes, and a high nose bridge. Just his height of 1.8 meters was enough to make most girls unable to resist. Plus, he was good at basketball, so he was given the title of Slam Dunk Prince. Probably because he had such a face that could bring disaster to the country, he felt that girls couldn't resist his charm. If it were any other girl, his kiss would probably be the beginning of a romantic relationship on campus. But to me, it was a great violation. I was shocked and pushed him away. I quickly wiped my lips with my sleeve and roared at him, "What are you doing?" As soon as I said that, my eyes immediately turned red. In my eyes, kissing was equivalent to the highest level of intimacy. His gentle caress caught me off guard, and my tears started to fall. He looked at me and held his forehead in frustration. "Why are you crying again? You're a bully. Didn't you say that I wasn't sincere enough? I thought you were the same as those girls." As Sue Chi spoke, he reached out to wipe away my tears. I covered my face, not letting him touch me. For a moment, he was at a loss of what to do. But he did, and because of that I know his name. Sue Chi. The door suddenly opened and a girl walked in while shouting, "I was wondering why I couldn't find you." It turns out, halfway through her words, she saw me, and her expression changed for the worse. I followed the voice and looked at her. It was a girl with delicate features in a tall uniform. She glanced at Sue Chi and then at me, her expression gradually becoming displeased. "Hey, who are you?" I don't know why, but she was hostile towards me. "You're not wearing Gao's uniform. Don't you know that students from other schools can't come in?" My heart skipped a beat, and I cursed under my breath. I hurriedly got up from the bed and prepared to leave. Sue Chi took my hand as if the girl was air and asked, "You haven't told me your name yet." Chapter 3095. Why should I tell you? How am I supposed to woo you if you don't tell me your name? Sue Chi's words were shocking. The girl's eyes widened in shock. She was also shocked by his words. "Sue Chi, what are you talking about?" I frowned, not wanting to be entangled with them any longer. I'm leaving. No. Su-chi walked around to stand in front of me and said stubbornly, "You can't leave until you tell me your name." "You," in a fit of anger, I said, "I already have a boyfriend." "You have a boyfriend?" Su-chi was a little surprised and asked in an unfriendly tone, "You're lying to me." "In Dong-yu," I said to him, "he's my boyfriend. Are you satisfied now?" "Dong-yu?" The girl's expression turned even uglier. "How is that possible? Dong-yu is the class monitor of our class, a top student. I've never heard him mention that he has a girlfriend. Can't a top student be in a relationship? Besides, who are you? Why does he have to report to you?" The girl was rendered speechless by my words and her expression turned even uglier. How could that bookworm have a girlfriend? Besides, he's famous for avoiding girls. I'm not talking to you anymore. I want to go home with Dong-yu. I couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him and rushed out of the door. He relentlessly chased after me. In the midst of our tussle, I heard Dong-yu's surprised voice in the corridor. "Shechuan?" As soon as I heard his voice, I turned around and saw him standing in the corridor with his school bag on his back. His back was straight. Immediately, as if I'd been waiting for help, I turned around and ran towards him. "Dong-yu." I threw myself on top of him and hugged him. Behind me, the two of them gasped. I didn't even have to think to know how shocked Su-chi and the girl were. I tugged at Dong-yu's sleeve and whispered, "Just tell them you're my boyfriend." Dong-yu looked at me blankly and then at the two people behind me. He was even more baffled. "What's wrong?" I took his arm and said, "I told them you're my boyfriend, but they didn't believe me." Dong-yu's face darkened and he whispered to me, "Shechuan, don't mess around." "I'm not messing around." I couldn't wait to get away from Su-chi, the jinx. I tugged at Dong-yu's sleeve and said, "Let's go home." With that, I hugged his arm and walked towards the school garage. When we got home, Dong-yu pulled me into the study and closed the door. He asked me sternly, "What's going on? Why are you with Su-chi?" Feeling wronged, I asked, Why are you so fierce?" It was rare for Dong-yu to give me such an expression. He was always so serious. He also realized that he had been too agitated. After calming himself down, he said, "In the future, keep your distance from Su-chi, understand?" "Oh. I don't think so." Even if he didn't say anything, I would still keep a distance from him. But what I didn't know was that the reason Dong-yu wanted me to keep my distance from Su-chi was because Su-chi had a bad reputation. Smoking, drinking, fighting, looking for trouble. Su-chi came from a wealthy family, so to him, going to school was just a necessary part of life. He didn't need to rely on studying to change his fate. In addition, his studies were not bad. Therefore, he spent most of his time skipping classes. Chapter 3096. At the time, Su-chi had many girls chasing after him. Rumor had it that he changed girlfriends every month and was famous for being a playboy. It was also said that Su-chi often went to bars, KTVs, and other entertainment venues. His parents didn't care about him, and the teachers in school couldn't do anything about him. That girl was one of his girlfriends. Seeing that I agreed so quickly, Dong-yu's anger dissipated. He immediately added, "Also, don't come to school to wait for me." "Why? You can take the bus back yourself. Although it's year 1 now, school ends very late. You don't have to wait for me and delay your homework." I was unhappy to hear that. "No. I want to go home with you. Shechuan, be good. The bus is too crowded." While I was complaining, Dad knocked on the door. "Dinner is ready. Come out and eat." That was the end of the topic. The next day, as usual, I waited for him to finish school and then we went home together. I also didn't bump into Su-chi again. Until one day, as I walked out of the school gate with my bag on my back, I bumped into the girl who had bumped into me and Su-chi in the infirmary that day. She seemed to have been waiting for me for a long time. As soon as I walked out of the school gate, I saw her walking towards me with precision and stopping in front of me. Your name is In Shechuan, right? I stared at her in confusion. What? There were two very tall girls standing behind her, and they looked very aggressive. Come here. She tugged at the strap of my bag and led me to the corner of the school gate. She pushed me against the wall and sneered. I'm warning you, stay away from Su Chi. Don't think that just because Su Chi wants to pursue you, he really likes you. It's just a spur-of-the-moment thing that he wants to do. I'll keep my distance from him even if you don't warn me. Did you know that Su Chi and In Dongyu had a fight? She suddenly questioned me. At her question, I suddenly remembered that when I came back from school last night, there were some bruises on Dongyu's knuckles. When I asked, he only said that he accidentally bumped into them. What happened? What else could it be? Because of you. That guy, Su Chi, didn't believe that you were In Dongyu's girlfriend. He found In Dongyu and said that he wanted to woo you. I don't know what the two of them said, but they got into a fight and almost got penalized. In Dongyu's grades were good and the school valued him highly. Hence, they turned a blind eye to this incident and merely gave him a verbal warning. In Dongyu, on the other hand, did not record any punishment. For the sake of justice, he only gave Su Chi a verbal warning. I was getting more and more confused. What does that have to do with me? You are In Dongyu's sister, aren't you? When Su Chi went to look for In Dongyu yesterday, he said so himself. I was stunned. For some reason, Dongyu's quick clarification of our relationship made me, inexplicably angry and unhappy. Why is he so eager to draw a line between us? With this conflicted mood, my tone also became angry. You came to find me for this? I sized her up and said suspiciously, don't tell me you like Su Chi. I'm Su Chi's girlfriend. She raised her head and said this with a sense of nobility that could not be sullied. Chapter 3097. These words probably pierced her heart. Perhaps I was right, but she immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation and rushed over to pull my hair. But why didn't she think about it? I'd been hanging out with boys since I was young. I wasn't afraid of fighting. She pulled my hair, and I punched her in the face. When the two girls behind her saw this, they rushed up as well. The three of them fought me together. However, I didn't back down at all. I wrestled with them, and they tore at my clothes. Just then, footsteps rushed over and a pair of hands separated us. The next second, I saw Su Chi glaring at them angrily and shielding me behind him. What are you doing? Su Chi. Why are you here? When the girl saw him, she questioned him with an aggrieved expression. Don't tell me you've really fallen for her? Su Chi. I'm your girlfriend. Su Chi turned around and glanced at me. When he turned back, his tone was cold. You used to be, but not anymore. What do you mean? I mean it literally. Don't you understand? Su Chi. Tears welled up in her eyes and she glared at me before looking at him. So, you're breaking up with me for her, right? Su Chi said, back then, you were the one who chased me while crying. I took pity on you, so I agreed. It was just a perfunctory thing. You don't have to take it seriously. These words were heartbreaking for a girl who was still in puberty and had ignorant fantasies about love. Are you sure you want to break up with me? She pointed at me. Because of her? Yuan Jing, stop pestering me. Do you know that what you're doing makes me feel disgusted? He warned again, also, I'm warning you, don't make trouble for her again. When Yuan Jing heard this, she clenched her fists and wiped away her tears. Then, she turned around and ran away. The two girls behind her chased after her in a panic. The three of them gradually disappeared into the distance. I immediately shook off his hand with an awkward expression. Don't touch me, okay? You make it sound like we're very close. Su Chi turned around and looked at me with a smile. In Shechuan. I'll remember your name. Su Chi approached me, the expression on his face so gentle that it was a little unfamiliar. Let's date. Can you be my girlfriend? Why should I be your girlfriend? Because I like you. I didn't understand why it was so easy for him to say the words, "I like you," which sounded so hard for me to say. It was so relaxed that I felt that his so-called love was definitely not very heavy. I pretended I didn't hear anything and turned to leave. He caught up with me and walked side by side with me. He even reached out and took my bag from my hands, as if he was trying to please me. I extended my hand to snatch it from him, but he dodged and smiled brightly. "Your backpack is so heavy. Let me help you carry it. I don't need your kindness." I tried to snatch it again, but he grabbed my hand and held it tightly. Then, he smiled brightly at me. As if I had touched a hot potato, I shook off his hand. He was clearly touching my hand, but my face felt hot as if it had been scalded. I turned my head and said, "It's getting late. I'm going home." He immediately leaned over. "I'll take you home." Chapter 3098. Su-chi pursed his lips but did not relent. "I like following you around." I couldn't stand it. It was only our second time meeting, but he seemed to be very familiar with me. I flew into a rage out of humiliation and asked him back, "What do you want?" Su-chi was surprised for a moment, but he still smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth. "Can't you tell that I'm chasing you?" My heart skipped a beat. Perhaps it was because his smile was too dazzling, but I quickly turned my head and said, "My mother doesn't allow me to date at such a young age." "You're already so old. Does your mother still care about you?" I ignored him and reached for my bag. Su-chi avoided me again and said, "I'll take you home." "No." "Yes." "No." "Yes." Su-chi threatened. "Otherwise, I'll tell the girls in your class that you like me." "Who likes you?" "You." I didn't know he was such a scoundrel, but I was really afraid that he would tell the people in my class that he liked me. So, I could only say, "Then you can't take me to the door. At most, you can take me to the bridge." "Okay. Then give me back my bag." Su-chi didn't insist and returned the bag to me. I took it, put it on my back, and immediately ran home. "Hey! In Sichuan." He realized that he had been tricked and shouted angrily behind me. I didn't look back, as if he was some kind of monster. I ran as fast as I could until I reached the bridgehead. I looked back and saw that I had shaken him off, so I stopped running. I panted as I walked back home. I thought that he would give up. Unexpectedly, Su-chi was even more persistent than I had imagined. Unexpectedly, I met him again at the gate the next day after class. He was sitting on a bicycle. When he saw me, he got off and pushed the bicycle in front of me. He snorted coldly. "Little liar." I looked at him guiltily and lowered my head. I couldn't help but wonder if he had waited for me at the school gate on his bicycle today just to make it easier for him to chase after me. "Don't follow me anymore. I'm going home." I turned around and left. He caught up with me and tugged at my sleeve. "Don't. It's still early. I'll treat you to some fun." "I don't want to. If I don't go home, my mother will be worried." "Using your mother as a shield again." He grabbed the strap of my bag and smiled. "Let's go. I'll take you to a fun place." Seeing that I couldn't avoid it this time, I got in the car. I thought that with his persistence, he would definitely follow me to my doorstep. Sitting on the back seat, I was worried about how to get rid of this annoying guy. When I came back to my senses, I found the bike parked at a luxurious place. At the door stood a few young students. 2 of them looked like gangsters. When they saw Su-chi, they greeted him respectfully. "Brother Su-chi, you're here. Skating rink?" I looked at the lighted sign and was startled. Su-chi asked me, "Have you ever skated?" I shook my head. To me, places like skating rinks, internet cafes, and karaoke rooms are all bad places. Whether it's parents or teachers, they are all forbidden from entering those places. Chapter 3099. I wasn't an obedient child, but I avoided such places. Hence, I was particularly resistant to entering such places. I immediately said, I don't like skating. I'd better go home. No. He put his arm around my shoulder and smiled. Skating is fun. You'll want to do it a second time after you've done it once. I haven't finished my homework yet. If I'm late, I won't be able to finish it in time. He snatched my bag and threw it to a few high school students behind him. He instructed, help her finish her homework. Wait. I stopped him. If the handwriting is different, the teacher will be able to tell. I'll get them to write it in pencil. When you go back, erase and rewrite according to the answers. It'll be quick. But, no buts. I'll treat you to a drink. Just treat it as an apology from last time. An apology? Yes. As Su-Chi spoke, he tapped his lips suggestively and smiled meaningfully. Don't tell me that last time was your first kiss. When I heard this, my face heated up. I turned away from him. He leaned in again and asked in a low voice, am I the first boy to kiss you? I immediately said, no. His expression immediately changed. No? Then, he said resentfully, seeing your excited reaction, I thought it was your first kiss. I said, my first kiss was long gone. Oh. Su-Chi was interested and asked, then who did you give your first kiss to? My brother. Your brother? Yes. I nodded and said, Ean Dong-yu. Su-Chi immediately smiled disapprovingly. That doesn't count. I muttered curiously, why doesn't it count? He's your brother, so it doesn't count. The first kiss is for someone of the opposite sex other than family. How can your brother count? When I heard this, I became even more unhappy. Su-Chi's smile deepened. Does that mean I was your first kiss? I said angrily, if you keep talking nonsense, I'll really go home. All right. All right. Su-Chi raised his hands in surrender. I was wrong. I was wrong, Missy. Let's go, I'll teach you how to skate. But even so, the corner of his mouth still held a secret smile, as if he was sure that it was my first kiss with him, and his mood was so bright. I ignored him and raised my head to look at the neon sign. For some reason, I didn't refuse and let him lead me in. I was quite curious about ice skating. I didn't know what kind of magical place the ice skating rink was. It made many parents' faces change when they talked about it. When they entered the skating rink, many people were wearing ice skates and playing freely on the field. Sometimes, there would be people lining up and grabbing the clothes of the people in front of them, forming a long line. I glanced around and saw a lot of guys and girls with strange hairstyles and strange clothes. Especially those ripped jeans, baggy pant legs, the clothes that hung down to his shoulders, and his hairstyle that was dyed in all sorts of colors. His weird aesthetic made people feel uncomfortable just by looking at him. Su-Chi hugged me and bought the tickets. Then, he changed into his ice skates. I actually found it novel. It seemed to be quite fun. Chapter 3100. Su-Chi hugged me, bought the tickets, and then changed into his skates. I actually found it novel. It seemed to be quite fun. When I was young, I was always filled with a desire to explore the unknown. I wanted to get close to it, to get to the bottom of it, to figure out what was going on, and to be immersed in it. But it often brought about scars. My parents always said that we, the younger generation, would not give up until we hit a brick wall. But the truth was that there were some things that one might not give up on even if they hit a brick wall. Even if one was covered in injuries, one had to continue down this path. For example, when it came to ice skating, one would often end up covered in injuries in the beginning. Ah. Bam. I lost count of the number of times I slipped and fell to the ground. Su-Chi skated in front of me, smiled at me, and reached out his hand to me. I looked at the pulley under his feet, not sure if he would also fall if he pulled me. However, Su-Chi saw my worry and said confidently, "Don't worry. I'm very skilled. I won't fall." Only then did I extend my hand to him skeptically. He grabbed my hand and pulled me to my feet. Su-Chi pulled me forward, but I didn't dare. After being on the ice for so long, it was difficult for me to even walk. Hence, I grabbed the railing tightly and refused to walk with him. However, he didn't see my actions. Hence, with the two forces resisting each other, I lost my balance and fell backward. Almost subconsciously, I grabbed his hand tightly. He was caught off guard. When he turned around, he lost his balance because of me. With a bang, I fell to the ground. He also fell on top of me. Fortunately, he reacted in time. Afraid of crushing me, he supported himself with both hands. Because of the impact, the back of my head hurt a lot. I complained in annoyance. When I opened my eyes, I was met with a pair of clear eyes. He stared at me. At such a close distance, his breath was on my face. For a moment, I didn't dare to breathe because I felt that if I breathed, what entered my lungs would be his gentle breath. A few of his friends skated over. When they saw this scene, they were overjoyed. "Su-Chi, you're really something. Su-Chi is getting better and better at picking up girls." Su-Chi obviously didn't hear what they were saying. He looked at me intently, but I heard it. In my embarrassment, I pushed him. "Hey! Did you do it on purpose?" Get up. I complained, "You're so heavy." "Oh," Su-Chi immediately got up and pulled me up. I shook off his hand, tidied my clothes, and stood aside with a red face. They were still laughing. Su-Chi turned around and glared at them. "If you keep laughing, I'll teach you a lesson." All right. Stop messing around." The few of them laughed and dispersed. Su-Chi looked at me and asked, "Are you okay?" I ignored him. He smiled and said, "Do you know how to skate?" I shook my head blankly. He said, "The biggest trick of ice skating is not to be afraid of falling." I was stunned. Huh? Don't be afraid of falling? But it would hurt if she fell. Chapter 3101. How will you learn if it doesn't hurt? More importantly, you have to be bold. Don't be afraid. You'll never learn to walk with small steps while holding onto the railing. With that, he reached out his hand to me. "Come, give me your hand." I looked at him warily. "What are you doing?" "Give me your hand." I hesitated for a few seconds. Then, I reached out my hand timidly. He grabbed my hand and pulled me to him. I swayed as he pulled me to him. My body was so stiff that I didn't dare to move an inch. "Relax." He looked at me and laughed. "You're usually quite fierce. You act like you're the biggest and aren't afraid of anything. Why are you so timid now that you're on roller skates?" I snorted coldly but didn't say anything. He faced me, holding my hand as he skated backwards. I was dumbfounded and my eyes went straight. "Won't you fall if you skate backwards?" "Of course not." He was smug, as if it was rare for him to have something to show off. "Am I very good?" I focused all my attention on the ground beneath my feet. I felt like I was being dragged by him like a trolley. "You can try moving your feet while maintaining your balance." I shook my head like a broken drum. Su-Chi said, "Don't be afraid of falling. Even if you fall, I'll be with you." As he said that, I grew a little bolder. With him holding my hand, I could actually stagger forward. I got the hang of it a little. In the end, I was able to skate slightly smoothly under his lead. However, the price of learning to skate was still very expensive. My knees were bruised from the fall. When I walked out of the skating rink, I felt as if my knees had cracked. I grimaced in pain. Su-Chi asked me, "Is it serious? Does it hurt a lot?" With that, he squatted down to check on the situation. I immediately dodged and said guiltily, "It's nothing. It's getting late. Take me home." Su-Chi smiled and stared at my face for a long time. Suddenly, he said, "So you can be shy too?" "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Su-Chi gave her a look. "Get in the car, I'll take you home." I sat in the back seat unwillingly. His steps were a little shaky, and I immediately grabbed the corner of his shirt nervously. He said, "If you're scared, you can hug me." "No way." Su-chi snorted and said disapprovingly, "How many girls want to sit in the back seat of my car? They don't even have the chance." "I don't care." All right, eldest miss. I was the one who begged you to take my car." Suki rode a little faster, and the bike sped along the dark road. I stared at the wheels under my feet, spinning fast. The breeze gently lifted the corner of his clothes. I saw the moonlight and the shadows of the lamps intertwined and fell on his body. His back blocked the bleak night wind from me, and I didn't feel so cold anymore. When I arrived downstairs, I started to feel nervous. It was the first time I had returned home so late. I didn't know what to say when I got home. Su-chi stuffed his bag into my arms and said, "I've done my homework. Remember to erase and rewrite it when you get home." "How's the accuracy?" "It can't be all wrong, right?" "You're kidding. Junior high school homework is very simple. Just scribble." Su-chi looked at me and asked, "Do you want me to take you upstairs?" Chapter 3102. There's no need. I stared at him and urged, "Hurry up and go home." Su-chi nodded, as if he still wanted to say something. I was suddenly a little afraid that he would say something that would make me feel awkward. I quickly stopped him. "Be careful on the road." "Do you have a cell phone?" he suddenly asked. I shook my head and frowned. "Why are you asking about my cell phone?" A cell phone was a luxury item for us in middle school. Usually, those who brought a cell phone to school were from wealthy families. Otherwise, they would only be equipped with one in high school. I shook my head and said, "No." Su-chi didn't persist. He waved his hand casually and left. I turned around and was about to go upstairs when I saw a slender figure on a small stone bench downstairs under the street lamp. I took a closer look and was shocked. Dongyu. I didn't know how long he had been sitting there and waiting. He must have seen Su-chi send me back just now. I suddenly felt a little guilty. Dongyu slowly stood up and walked towards me. There was a hint of anger and sullenness in his eyes. He looked down at me and then at the bag in my arms. He asked in a low voice, "You're back so late. Where did you go?" I looked at him and hesitated. After thinking for a long time, I lied. "I went to my classmate's house for tuition." "Classmate?" Dongyu's expression darkened. "So, why were you with Su-chi?" "Huh." I was even more flustered. "Brother, you saw everything." Usually, I would call him by his name. Only when I made a mistake and angered him would I carefully call him brother. "Did you know?" Dongyu suddenly said, "When you lie, you don't dare to look at me." I lowered my head, feeling a little embarrassed. "I didn't mean to lie to you. I was just afraid that you'd be worried. I admit that I really don't know how to lie. The most perfect lie in my life was when I cried to him one day and told him, 'Dongyu, I don't love you anymore. I've let go.' Dongyu couldn't bear to blame me too much. I knew that as long as I showed such an expression, he would definitely not pursue the matter. 'Since you know that I will be worried, then don't come home so late next time.' He lowered his head and his gaze suddenly landed on my knee. There was a tinge of heartache in his eyes. He immediately squatted down and touched the bruise with his fingertips. He furrowed his beautiful eyebrows and asked, "What happened?" "I fell." He looked up. "You fell? How did you fall?" I said, "I accidentally tripped on a rock." Dongyu was so angry that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He poked my head hard and said, "You can even fall while walking? Are your eyes growing on top of your head?" When I heard him say that, I knew he couldn't bear to be angry with me. I smiled and hugged his arm, burrowing into his embrace. "Brother, I was wrong." Dongyu took the opportunity to hug me. He sounded helpless and couldn't bear to say anything more. He only said calmly, "Do you know how worried I am?" He couldn't reach me, and I didn't have a phone, so he stayed downstairs and waited for me. I whispered, I won't do it again. There will be a next time. No more, no more. There will be no next time. Remember. Don't come home late. Chapter 3103. I took his hand and was about to follow him upstairs when I suddenly asked nervously, "Where's Mom and Dad?" "They're asleep." Then, I hesitated for a moment, not daring to go upstairs. Will they scold me? They must be angry that I'm home so late. I told them that you were tutoring at your classmate's house, but they didn't say much. Brother, you're amazing. Donyu glared at me, and I didn't dare to make a sound. I followed him upstairs and entered my room. I had just taken out my exercise book when he checked it for me as usual. I refused, but he moved quickly. He picked up the exercise book and flipped through it, only to find that there was something fishy about it. He had always been observant. Sensing that there was something wrong with the handwriting, he hit me on the head with the exercise book. Who helped you with this homework? Suchi's friend. Dongyu was stunned and made a move to hit me with the exercise book. I shrunk my shoulders and looked timid. He was both angry and amused. Then, he erased all the answers on the exercise book with an eraser. I exclaimed and quickly reached out to snatch the eraser from him. Brother, what are you doing? Redo it. Use your own brain. Dongyu stared at me. The monthly exam is coming up. Do you know how to do these questions? I know, then do it for me. But, it's already so late. I'm sleepy. I'll accompany you. Dongyu tidied up my exercise book and took out a book. After flipping through it casually, he had a rough idea of what to do. I had no choice but to work through the night and finish all my homework. It wasn't until 1 a.m. that I climbed into bed. After taking a shower, Dongyu entered my room. Seeing that I was already lying on the bed, unable to open my eyes, he gave me a carton of milk. Then, he glanced at my unpacked bag on the table and silently helped me tidy it up. When he walked out of the room, my eyelids couldn't hold on any longer. The moment the door closed, I fell asleep. The next day after school, Suchi was waiting for me at the school gate again. I didn't know if this had anything to do with boys' desire to conquer during puberty, but at the time, I thought that such persistence definitely didn't involve much liking. Every day after school, he would ride his bicycle and wait for me at the school gate. I usually ignored him, turned around, and walked in the direction of home. He would often ride his bicycle and follow behind me. Even if I didn't communicate with him at all, he still seemed to enjoy it. With him following me, I naturally couldn't wait for Dongyu to go home together. After all, if he saw me with Suchi, I wouldn't be able to explain myself no matter how many times I tried. It's not like I didn't know what kind of guy Suki was. Rumor had it that he was a particularly dandy child. In addition to his dark history of fighting, smoking, and drinking, he also had a lot of criminal records. Suchi's reputation was so great that even though we were separated by a street, rumors about him had spread like wildfire in my school. I heard that he has dated many girls. Some of them were pursued by him on his own accord, while others were destined to pursue him. All in all, there should be enough for a class, right? Chapter 3104. In the past, Suchi secretly drove his father's car out. It was a Bentley. I heard it cost a few million each. He didn't have a driver's license, and his car and person were detained by the traffic police. In the end, it was his father who took him back. Suchi's family is very rich. His parents are very prestigious entrepreneurs in the city. I heard that he lives in a mansion from Shuanglong's original novel. It's more than 1,000 square meters in size and has 2 swimming pools. The back garden is bigger than a football field. My impression of him was even worse. But no matter how much I tried to avoid him, I seemed to have underestimated his patience. Once a young boy developed a strong interest in something, he would probably become very passionate about it. He would do it regardless of anyone's opinion. He liked to play basketball and worked hard at it. He chased after a girl and worked hard at it. They didn't need to think about whether it would succeed or fail. Perhaps they just enjoyed the joy of the process. including the matter of love. When I grew up, I used to think that if we, who had entered society and gradually learned to deal with things smoothly, who had learned to give up on what we couldn't get, and who didn't have to be so persistent, whether it was Su Chi or me, would we have been like moths to a flame, chasing after the lighthouse in our hearts without care for our own safety. Just like how I liked Dongyu, how could Su Chi's love for me not go its own way? When we were young, adults laughed at us for being too naive and simple. We never thought much of it. We thought we were mature. We were unruly, unwilling, vigorous, rebellious. We thought that our society was the real society. Adults were the stupid ones. But when I grew up and looked back, I suddenly realized that I was really naive and simple when I was young. Since I was young, I thought that if I liked someone, I had to be fearless. But after I grew up, I found it difficult to muster up the courage to love. It was precisely because I was too rational that I knew very well that if I fell deeply in love, I would be hurt again and again. I always say now, don't be too obsessed with love. It doesn't bring any benefits. Only a few people are happy, and most of them suffer the pain of being lost. Persevering again and again, until finally giving up reluctantly. It's unforgettable. Love, half of it is enough. It's not all there is to life. However, people may say nice things, but they may not necessarily do well. At most, I'm just trying to show off. Even I can't get out of this predicament. It's like being trapped in a foggy swamp. At that time, Su Chi was probably like me, fearless when it came to love. Perhaps it was his persistence that finally moved me. When he handed me a cornetto, I took it and said, "Thank you." I didn't notice how flattered he looked. "You're finally willing to talk to me?" I smiled. I was willing to pay attention to him because I thought he was too silly. He followed me around like a shadow every day. Ever since I was young, I was the only one who followed Dongyu around. One day, there was also someone who followed behind me like I did. It seemed that because of this, I didn't hate his face that much anymore. It's not bad to have someone accompany me home. Su Chi smiled. I glanced at him and couldn't help but say, "You don't seem as bad as the rumors say." Chapter 3105. Rumors? Su Chi's interest was piqued. "What rumors?" "Rumors about you. Some people say that you skip class, smoke, drink, get into fights, and that a girl once had an abortion for you. Are these all true?" When Su Chi heard this, he laughed mockingly. "Oh, that's all. I thought it was something else. Then are these rumors true?" "Half-truths." "Half-truths?" I was even more confused. I didn't understand what he meant. "It's either true or false." "What do you mean by half-truths?" "Sometimes, what you see may not be true. What he heard with his ears might not necessarily be true. For example, I smoke, I drink, and I get into fights. These are all true. But there are rumors that a girl once had an abortion for me. I accompanied a girl to have an abortion, but I wasn't the one who got her pregnant." "If it wasn't you, who was it?" "Well, I can't tell you." Su Chi smiled. "I promised to keep it a secret." "Petty." I muttered, "You have so many secrets." "Who doesn't have secrets? If you really want to know, why don't we trade?" Su Chi rode around to stand in front of me and sized me up. "You should have a little secret too. You tell me your secret, and I'll tell you mine. That's only fair." I looked at him seriously. After a while, I smiled at him and pretended to be mysterious. "I can't tell you." "Tisk." Su Chi looked indifferent. Turning around, I bit my lip and clutched my chest, my heart racing. I returned home with a heavy heart. When I pushed open the door to the study, I saw that Dongyu's books were still neatly arranged on his desk. Obviously, he hadn't returned home from school yet. I stood there for a long time, recalling Su Chi's words. Just as he said, everyone has an unspeakable secret in their hearts. And my unspeakable secret was only related to Dongyu. I liked him. Since when did she realize that her feelings for him were not ordinary? Was it when he watched me bathe when I was being bullied, and then went to find that person angrily to denounce him? Or was it when I saw the other children flocking around him, and I longed for him to belong to me alone? Was it when Menglan said that Dongyu and I couldn't be together? Or was it when I saw him take out so many gifts from the table and throw them all into the trash can, and I felt incomparably happy in my heart? No one knew. From the moment I was born, my feelings for Dongyu were different from everyone else's. It wasn't the closeness of a family member, nor was it the love of a lover. Instead, in this world, other than him, I could become indifferent to anyone else. Could this be considered a form of love? I was a little confused about this. I wanted to understand, but I wasn't in a hurry to understand. He always felt that once some things were made clear, it would become difficult to make a choice. This kind of strange feeling became more and more perplexing after a random incident. I remember once, during the annual sports meet of First High School, I snuck into the school to play. I found Dongyu's classroom with familiarity. As soon as I walked in, I saw a girl standing sneakily in front of Dongyu's desk. She was holding an envelope in her hand, as if she was going to stuff it in. Chapter 3106. The girl was startled by my sudden action. She patted her chest and turned to look at me with a baffled expression. "Who are you?" she muttered, blushing as she reached out to snatch the envelope from my hand. I dodged her and stubbornly asked, "Tell me. What is this?" "Why should I tell you? This is mine. Give it back to me." She reached out to snatch it from me. I held the envelope behind my back, almost glaring at her with a hostile look. "This is a love letter, isn't it?" A hint of embarrassment appeared on her face as she looked at me awkwardly. Then, she asked in dissatisfaction, "Who are you? Who are you to control me? I don't care who you are, and you don't have to care who I am. Don't send such things over in the future." With that, I grabbed the envelope by the waist and tore it into pieces. She stared at me with her mouth agape. I thought that this love letter must have taken a lot of effort, but in my hands, it had turned into a pile of debris. One could imagine how angry she was that her eyes were red with anger. Footsteps came from outside the door. Dongyu and a few boys from his class returned to the classroom. When I saw him, I felt inexplicably at a loss. I felt like I had been caught red-handed. Just now, in a moment of impulse, I didn't care about anything else and did what I did. After calming down, I felt that I had indeed gone overboard. However, I couldn't control my hand. I just felt that the letter should have been torn into pieces. When the girls saw Dongyu, her eyes turned even redder. She burst into tears, feeling wronged and helpless. Dongyu walked over and looked at me, then at her. His face was filled with confusion. The boys behind him were also confused. "What's going on?" he asked with concern in a gentle tone. However, subconsciously, he walked up to me. From the details, I knew that he was wholeheartedly protecting me. "Dongyu, who is she?" The girl pointed at me and complained, "She tore up the thing I gave you for no reason." Dongyu frowned and turned to look at me. His tone was low. "Shechuan, why are you causing trouble again?" "Brother," I whispered, "I don't like other girls sending you love letters." "Didn't Mom say that we shouldn't fall in love?" Dongyu was stunned for a few seconds. He had always been smart, so he immediately realized what had happened. I saw him bend down and pick up a few pieces from the ground. He put them together, a helpless expression on his face. He looked up and glanced at the girl. "Love letter?" The girl blushed and was a little embarrassed, but she still nodded. "Yeah. You were the one who gave me that box of chocolates, right?" Dongyu asked again. Hearing his question, she mustered up her courage and said, "Dongyu, I like," as if he knew what she was going to say. Dongyu interrupted her bluntly and said lightly, "Don't give me these things anymore." As he spoke, he took out a box of chocolates from the table. It was hot and the chocolate had melted. I didn't see him bring the chocolates home. It turned out that he had left them on his desk in the classroom. I kept forgetting to deal with this box of chocolates. "Here you go. Chapter 3107. Aren't you going to hear me out? Since they had already spoken face to face, she mustered up her courage and said, "Don't you? I just transferred to First High School. I've liked you since the first time I saw you at the opening ceremony. I was the one who gave you the chocolates and the greeting cards. I didn't have the courage to confess to you. I also know that perhaps I'm overthinking and causing you trouble, but these are all my intentions. Must you reject them?" Dong-yu was a very soft-hearted person. At least, every time I got into trouble and he was angry with me, I would coax him and beg for mercy. No matter how angry he was, it would quickly dissipate. However, this was also the first time I realized that Dong-yu wasn't soft-hearted. Although the girl looked like she was about to cry, his face remained cold. "Don't cry, and don't feel aggrieved. I know you like me, but I have no obligation to respond to you." The girl probably didn't expect his words to be so straightforward and cruel. Now that there were other people present, she felt embarrassed. She didn't even remember to take the chocolates. She turned around and rushed out of the classroom. Only then did a few boys come to life. They walked up to him and teased, "Dong-yu, do you have to hurt her like this?" "That's right. That girl's eyes are swollen." Dong-yu glanced at them and said lightly, "Since you can't give her any response, don't give her any hope." When I heard this, I couldn't help but be startled. On the way home, he rode his bike. I wrapped my arms around his waist and suddenly asked curiously, "Dong-yu, do you often receive love letters?" "No. I remember when we were in primary school, many girls liked you." I hugged him tightly and said uneasily, "Will you have a girl you like in the future?" As soon as I said that, I noticed that his back stiffened. Then, I heard him ask in a deep voice, "Do you have someone you like?" "No," I said immediately. "I don't like anyone except you. That's just for now." Dong-yu smiled. "When you grow up, you'll have a boy you like. You'll get to know each other, fall in love with each other, and then spend the rest of your life with each other." "That's not it," I said disdainfully. "I like Dong-yu the most. I don't like anyone else." At this point, he seemed to be avoiding the topic. "What do you want to eat tonight?" Seeing that he had skipped this topic, I didn't insist on it and changed the topic to something else. However, his words still made me uneasy. Would he have a girl he liked in the future? From knowing each other, to loving each other, to staying together for the rest of their lives? Then, what about me? When that time comes, where will my position be? That night, he fell asleep. I crept into his room and sat by his bed, looking at his sleeping face. Ever since he was young, the closest person to him was me. Only the heavens knew how many people envied this special position. But when I think that one day, this position will be replaced by another girl, I feel a little unwilling. I lay down beside him, and as I hugged him, a bold thought popped into my head. Could I like him? As soon as this thought occurred to me, my whole body tensed up. The word like was too familiar. However, the word love was a little unfamiliar to him. Chapter 3108. I liked him, but I didn't know if this was love. Did it have anything to do with sex between men and women? My relationship with Su-chi gradually grew closer. Perhaps, deep down, I hoped that someone would gradually replace Dong-yu. I couldn't rely on him too much. I thought that perhaps my world was too small, so much so that other than my family, there was only him. I couldn't touch the outside world. Hence, all my obsessions were only related to him. Then, what about trying to touch others? Shachuan. Every time school ended, Su-chi's handsome smiling face would appear in front of me on time. I always used to put my bag in his basket, then get into his back seat and let him drive me home. But that day, I flunked my exam and was in a bad mood after being scolded. I was frowning at the thought of not knowing how to explain myself when I got home. Tomorrow is Saturday. You don't have to rush home today, do you? Come and have fun with me. It's getting late. I'm going home. I hugged my exam papers and turned around to leave. I walked past him coldly and headed home. Su-chi also noticed that something was wrong with my expression. He caught up with me on his bike and asked, "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood?" I glared at him, wanting to cry. Some people are born with a talent for reading, such as Dongyu and Su-chi. Even if they don't pay much attention in class, they can still learn a lot of homework by flipping through the books. But I don't seem to be such a genius. Hence, in the monthly exam a few days later, I did my best to rank among the top few in class and failed 3 out of 5 subjects. I was just in the bottom few. The bottom few students had to be announced to the whole class. I was dragged to the podium in the spotlight and was criticized along with the other students who had failed the exam. We returned to our seats with our tails between our legs. I was so ashamed that I almost shed tears. Hence, when I saw Su-chi's bright smile at the school gate, I was in no mood to talk to him. Su-chi walked over and took the exam paper from my arms when I wasn't paying attention. I took a closer look and saw the huge 58 on it. It was extremely glaring. "You only scored 58 in math?" I said angrily, "What does it have to do with you? Give it back to me." Su-chi dodged and switched to the language paper, 67 marks. "It's so easy to memorize junior high language, yet you only got such a low score." Su-chi. I stomped my feet, my face turning even redder. Su-chi took the bag from me and said, "Get in the car." "Where to?" "To give you extra lessons." Su-chi added, "I've made an appointment with Dongyu." I was stunned for a moment. When I heard that Dongyu was there, I got into his car. Ever since I came home late that time, I didn't expect Dongyu and Su-chi to become friends. I guess Dongyu probably felt that since he couldn't chase Su-chi away from me, then becoming friends with him was a form of protection in disguise. The two of them had similar personalities. One was as passionate as fire, while the other was as calm as ice. They usually played basketball together after class, so they got along pretty well. After I failed the monthly exam, Dongyu and Su-chi took turns tutoring me. Initially, the tutoring location was set up in the library. However, for some reason, whenever Dongyu and Su-chi appeared together, the library would become noisy. Chapter 3109. Being sandwiched between the two school hunks of E High School, I felt like there were many pairs of eyes staring at me from behind. Hence, he decided to tutor me at Su-chi's house. The first time I went to Su-chi's house, it was in a high-end apartment next to E High School. It was more than 160 square meters. At that time, the average price of land was more than 30,000 yuan. Every inch of land was worth gold. Such an apartment was considered a mansion. It was such a big apartment, but he lived alone. Usually, the nanny would cook for him and take care of his daily life. Su-chi preferred silence, so other than the fixed cleaning time, he was the only one at home. He said that his parents were busy with their business and were rarely at home, so he lived alone. His living room was very big, more than 50 square meters. At that time, all kinds of game consoles were still rare, but it was commonplace in his house. There were all kinds of games. While I was revising, Dongyu and Su-chi were playing games with the game controllers. I watched from the side, envious. The taste of tutoring was especially boring. During that period, I was cut off from eating, drinking, and having fun. I remembered that at that time, there was a Japanese-themed haunted house that opened at Ocean Department Store. Business was in full swing and its reputation was exceptionally good. Many young students sought excitement. After a trip to the haunted house, they said that they hadn't had enough. It was very interesting, scary, and exciting. They highly recommended it and even formed cliques. I was afraid of ghosts, but I was very curious about ghosts and gods. Since I was young, I liked to drag Dongyu to watch ghost movies. Hence, I suggested that we go to the haunted house together. However, Dongyu countered, "If you get into the top 10 in the next monthly exam, I'll take you there." Su-chi added, "As long as you do well, I'll treat you." I withered. "What if I don't do well?" Dongyu said coldly, "Then there's no chance." I bit the end of my pen. My ambition was finally ignited, and I worked even harder in my tutoring. However, how should I put it? With ambition comes motivation. After the results of the mid-semester monthly exam, although I wasn't close to the top 10, I was 0.5 points behind the 10th place. Dongyu wasn't unreasonable. On the weekend, I made an appointment with Su Chi to go to the haunted house together. After buying the tickets, I was a little timid and didn't dare to go in. Seeing my timid look, Su Chi couldn't help but laugh at me. "You were the one who said you wanted to come and have fun. In the end, you hid at the door and didn't dare to enter. What's the meaning of this?" Dongyu said, "She's afraid. She's especially afraid of ghosts." Su Chi said, "You dare to challenge a haunted house when you're afraid of ghosts?" I couldn't take it lying down. Who said I was scared? The slogan was loud and clear, but I still didn't dare to step in. Su Chi ran out of patience and walked over to take my hand. I flinched and avoided his hand. I snorted and said, "I'm here. Don't walk in front. Then I'll have you walk in the middle." As Dongyu spoke, he took my hand and led the way. For some reason, the moment he held my hand, I felt that the pitch-black door, which was like an endless abyss, was no longer that terrifying. I mustered up my courage and followed him. Su Chi, who was behind him, was stunned for a few seconds. He only followed after the staff urged him. Chapter 31:10. As we passed by a hospital bed, a staff member with disheveled hair, dressed as Sadako, suddenly let out a sinister cry at me. I was so frightened that I hugged Dongyu's back tightly and shouted as I squeezed past him to move forward. Dongyu and Su Chi were calm. They probably knew that this was all fake and it was difficult for them to get into character. However, I screamed the entire time. When I walked out of the exit, I fell to the ground as if I had just survived a disaster. When I realized that I had escaped, I was still in a state of shock. Tears streamed down my face as I cried bitterly. Dongyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hugged my shoulders and patted my back, comforting me, all right. Don't be afraid anymore. You're not in there anymore and you're still crying. You're really something." His heart ached and he found it funny. Su Chi was convulsing with laughter at the side. He was probably amused by my crying face. Beside me, a girl in a staff uniform walked over and asked weakly, "Are you a student of Second High?" I looked up and saw her looking at the uniform I was wearing. She nodded with tears in her eyes. Seeing my tears, she handed me a tissue and smiled helplessly. "Is the haunted house that scary?" "Yes." I nodded. Then she said, "My name is Han Xiao. I'm also a student of Second High. I'm in Year 1, Class 9. What about you?" When I heard this, I immediately forgot to cry. I said in surprise, "You're in Second High too?" Han Xiao was the first and only close friend I had in my middle school life. Later, she found out that her uncle had invested in the haunted house. She would come here on weekends to work part-time while she was still studying. At that time, it wasn't unusual for underage children to work. Furthermore, it was her family's business, so she didn't have any qualms. From then on, Han Xiao and I became very good friends. We talked about everything and were very close. I often dragged her to the basketball court at First High after school to watch Dongyu and Su Chi play basketball. After that, we would go home together. We occupied the back seat of Dongyu and Su Chi's bicycle. Most of the time, I would sit in the back seat of Dongyu's car. He was sweaty and sticky. Even though I was sweating profusely, I didn't hesitate to hug him. Sitting in the back seat, he watched the sun set in the west. The sunset fell on his body through the mottled shadows of the trees, as if he was plated with gold. At that time, everything was so beautiful. During the first long holiday of middle school, we agreed to go to Fragrant Hill to play in the water. Fragrant Mountain was a very small mountain, but what was famous about it was not the mountain, but the huge lake beside the mountain. It was so clear that one could see the bottom. At that time, although clear lake water was common, there weren't many places where one could get close to water. The lake was connected to the shore, and the lake water overflowed the shore. I liked to walk on the shallow shore and watch the clear lake water submerge my ankles. It was so comfortable. At noon, they spread out a tablecloth by the shore and placed the snacks they brought on the tablecloth. Han Xiao seemed to be a little uncomfortable. Seeing that her face was a little pale, I asked a few questions with concern. She seemed a little awkward and a little shy. She only said that her stomach was not feeling well. But at that time, I didn't understand the process that girls had to go through during their puberty. Chapter 31:11. Brother. Brother, after a few syllables, another wave of pain hit me. I immediately sobered up and realized that it was Saturday and the school was closed. Dongyu had gone to school for class. High school was a heavy workload. As a top student in the top class, Dongyu would attend classes every Saturday and weekend morning. He was still in his second year of high school, but he was already working hard on the college entrance examination. Every year, the college entrance examination was a reshuffling of fate. If the college entrance examination went smoothly, it might mean that the future of one's life would be smooth sailing. At least for the high school students of that period, the college entrance examination was an extremely heavy word filled with hope and pain. There was no one at home. I sat up in bed, clutching my stomach. I moved my body and immediately realized that there was something strange about the bed sheets. I lifted the blanket with difficulty and moved my legs, only to realize that there was a faint red stain on the bed sheets. It was extremely eye-catching. Blood. Why was there blood? I was scared out of my wits. I didn't know what had happened to my body. I was fine last night. Why was I bleeding when I woke up? I couldn't figure out where the blood came from. Clutching my stomach, I rushed into the bathroom. When I took off my pants, I saw a bloody stain on them. My eyes widened as if I'd been struck by lightning. For a moment, blood cancer, leukemia, all sorts of terrifying words lingered in my mind. Don't tell me I've contracted some kind of terminal illness? At the thought of this possibility, I fell onto the toilet. All the blood in my body flowed to the top of my head and I felt dizzy. What should I do? What should I do? I was anxious and restless. I felt suffocated at the thought that I might have contracted some kind of terminal illness. Thinking further, if I were to die from a terminal illness, what would happen to Dongyu? At noon, Dongyu returned home from school. I was still hiding in the bathroom, clutching my stomach and sobbing. When I heard his footsteps, I stood up helplessly and opened the door. He was about to look for me when he saw me suddenly appear at the bathroom door. He was shocked. When he saw that my eyes were red and my face was wet with tears, he looked even more puzzled. What's wrong? Brother, I clutched my stomach in pain and groaned a few times. Although I couldn't see my face, it must have been extremely pale and distorted because I saw that Dongyu was at a loss. What's going on? When he came closer, he saw the blood dripping from my body. The color drained from his face. Hang in there, I'll send you to the hospital right away. He carried me in his arms and rushed downstairs. He didn't even have time to catch his breath as he ran to the side of the road and got into a taxi. He said to the driver, "Driver, go to the First People's Hospital now." The driver was scared out of his wits. He thought that I was about to die, so he stepped on the accelerator and sped toward the hospital. He even ran several red lights. When we arrived at the hospital, Dongyu couldn't even make it in time to register. He carried me into the emergency room and said nervously to the doctor, "Doctor, please save my sister. She lost a lot of blood, and kept crying out in pain to me." The doctor also walked over anxiously. Seeing my pale face, he furrowed his brows. Then, he saw that my pants were stained with blood. His expression became complicated. Chapter 31:12. How old are you? I said, 14 years old, in the second year of junior high school. Where does it hurt? My stomach hurts, I cried. Doctor, am I dying? I've lost a lot of blood. The doctor frowned and asked Dongyu to put me on the bed. After chasing Dongyu out, he sat down and said meaningfully, "Young lady, did your mother never tell you what menarche is?" The muscles on the doctor's face twitched violently again as he calmly explained. It turned out that this wasn't a terminal illness. It was a period that all girls would experience when they reached puberty. It was commonly known as Aunt Flo. Every month, it would come on time. This was a necessary process for a girl to evolve into a woman. After saying that, the doctor smiled, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Terminal illness? Young lady, you've been watching too many television dramas, haven't you? I was so embarrassed that my face turned red and I was at a loss. However, my mother and I didn't talk much about this. She didn't tell me what kind of changes a girl's body would undergo when she reached puberty. My mother seemed very concerned about Dongyu, but she seemed a little cold to me. My father was a typical male chauvinist. He wasn't good with words, and he wouldn't show me much concern. So much so that when I opened the door and saw Dongyu pacing back and forth, I didn't know what to say. This wasn't a terminal illness, but an ordinary menstrual period. On the way back, Dongyu also looked embarrassed. He looked at me and then at the bag in my hand. Inside the bag were the Sophie sanitary pads he'd bought from the supermarket. The first pack of sanitary pads in my life was chosen for me by Dongyu. I blushed as I followed behind him and watched him pick out the sanitary pads from the shelf. The shop assistant recommended Sophie, and he paid for a few packs without thinking. That night, when my mother came back and found out about this, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That was why she taught me about this. The reason my stomach hurt so much was probably because I ate a few popsicles without restraint the night before. During menstruation, one shouldn't touch anything cold. The first lesson taught me a harsh lesson. In the first semester of the second year of junior high school, just as I was preparing for the monthly exam, bad news came from my hometown. Grandma was seriously ill. The doctor issued a notice of critical illness and told my father that the old lady's time was up. After bringing Grandma home from the hospital, her last wish was to see me and Dongyu one last time. I vaguely remember that it was a snowy night. It had rained the day before, and the cold air had frozen all the water on the road into ice. My father drove us all the way home at a speed of 60 miles per hour. I sat in the back seat, tears streaming down my face. Dongyu put his arm around my shoulder, his expression grave. He was usually reserved, but when he found out that Grandma was seriously ill, he was worried. I saw that his eyes were red too. The family of 4 rushed back to their hometown. Dongyu and I rushed to the sickbed. Grandma took one last look at us and finally smiled in relief. She finally let out the last breath that was stuck in her throat. Then, she breathed her last. When she closed her eyes, that old hand that was like a withered tree was still holding my hand tightly. I couldn't accept the fact and broke down crying. Dongyu also knelt heavily beside her. He lowered his head and wept. Chapter 31:13. A suffocating pain enveloped me. For the first time in my life, I realized that my heart could really hurt. It was a kind of pain that made one feel suffocated, helpless, and at a loss. On the night of Grandma's death, the family was busy with the funeral, while Dongyu slept with me in the small room upstairs. I couldn't close my eyes for the entire night. Tears kept streaming down my face as I hugged Grandma's large fan and cried until the sky turned dark. I remember this big cattail leaf fan. When I was young, when the weather was hot, my grandmother would stay by my bedside and fan us tirelessly over and over again until we fell asleep. When I went upstairs, I saw it and my heart almost broke. Dongyu hugged me, not knowing how to comfort me. Even he was in a heavy mood because of Grandma's death. As if affected by my emotions, he also shed tears. "Shechuan, don't cry, okay?" He comforted me gently and held me in his arms as if he was coaxing a child. I didn't know how to respond to him. Although I didn't make a sound, my tears never stopped. He probably felt his heart ache. He held my face and carefully pecked away the tears from the corners of my eyes. Because of this kiss, I was shocked. My heart, which had been calm and unremarkable, suddenly raced. In the darkness, Dongyu didn't seem to notice anything strange about me, but he also sensed that I was no longer crying. He also knew that this kind of comfort seemed to be able to calm my emotions for a short time. He held my face and gently kissed away my tears, just like he did when we were young. When I was young, I was especially fond of crying. This was how Dongyu comforted me. Little did he know that when he grew up, such actions added to the ambiguity between a man and a woman. My heart was beating faster, but I was willing to be comforted by him like this. Subconsciously, I wrapped my arms around his waist. When I hugged him just now, he seemed to have woken up. He looked up slightly and met my eyes. I couldn't see the expression on his face, and he couldn't see the emotions in my eyes. He only smiled softly and said, "Little fool, don't cry. Grandma is gone, and I'll be with you. Can you stay with me forever? I promise Grandma to take good care of you." This wasn't the kind of care I wanted. This blockhead of his didn't seem to understand what I was talking about. Later, I realized that perhaps Dongyu had already understood at that time. However, he deliberately avoided it and didn't respond. Just like when I was young, I stubbornly pursued the answer. But Dongyu had long known that some things, once they were clarified, they weren't the outcome he wanted to see. Some things would be less painful if they were vague, and one would not have to face a cruel choice. He built a utopian world, hoping that these two feelings could coexist. That night, he held me in his arms and stayed with me the whole night until I calmed down. After the funeral, in order to thank the relatives who had helped at the funeral, Dad booked a private room in the hotel and treated them to a meal. On such occasions, Dongyu was always the center of attention. Chapter 31:14. Mom. The girl sitting at the side blushed and looked around shyly. Finally, her gaze landed on Dongyu. She pouted, but her eyes couldn't hide her adoration. Actually, such a joke couldn't be more normal. However, I didn't like it very much, so much so that I didn't look happy the entire time. I was uneasy to realize that Dongyu and I were not destined to be bound together. Just as he said back then, maintaining this relationship would remain the same for the rest of our lives. And a third party was bound to barge in between us. The thought of this third party unscrupulously occupying his arms, his chest, his love, and that he wouldn't only have eyes for me. His care and protection wouldn't only be limited to me, made me fall into an unprecedented panic. What made me even more uneasy was that I was actually extremely repulsed by this possibility. I even felt a deep hatred for this third party who had yet to appear. I knew that it was ridiculous for me to think this way. Dongyu and I were destined to be impossible. This forbidden love had an ending from the very beginning. It was destined to never be fulfilled. However, I still harbored a pitiful and humble hope, trying to find a way to break through this wall. However, every time I saw my parents' faces, I couldn't suppress the guilt in my heart. I thought that I must be hopeless. Even so, I couldn't escape this torture. Hence, for a long time, I fell into this vicious cycle. I was haunted day and night and couldn't get out of it no matter what. I thought that I had been ill for a long time and couldn't recover. Other than Dongyu, no one could cure me. I had also tried to let others into my world, but I sadly realized that it was like my world was shackled. It was just that no one could break that shackle no matter how hard they tried. At the beginning of my life, Dongyu was my only faith. Even though the world was barren, I only wanted him to be by my side. I realized that my feelings for him were getting harder and harder to suppress. When I was in my second year of secondary school, it happened to be the 50th anniversary of second high school. There was going to be a cultural performance, and the class was collecting performances. I was forced to sign up, probably because the music teacher knew that I could play the piano well, so he strongly recommended me to perform. I didn't know why, but I agreed. Because the teacher said that if I participated in the talent show, I would get extra credits. At that time, credits were also an important consideration. After signing up, I had another excuse to pester Dongyu every night. He was a little surprised when he found out that I was participating in the school's talent show. Dongyu had been learning to play the piano since he was young. As his sparring partner, I watched him from the side and would occasionally pester him to teach me how to play the piano. Although my technique wasn't that professional, Dongyu said that this blockhead of mine had some talent in music. Whatever I do, I always have a bit of passion. When it comes to the piano, I don't know if it's because of my love for the piano or some other reason, but I actually persisted for a long time. That month, I practiced the guqin especially hard. Dongyu chose a song for me. I wasn't particularly obsessed with etudes and elegant songs that were too artistic. Hence, I chose a nice but simple song, Lin Junjie's Jiangnan. Chapter 31:15. But with less than 2 weeks to go before the school's anniversary celebration, I started to feel nervous. I'd heard that the school's anniversary celebration would be held in the school's newly built arts hall. I had a deep impression of this hall. Occasionally, when I was on duty to clean up, I was amazed by the magnificent hall. The hall was large enough to accommodate thousands of people. It was said that during the school's anniversary celebration, the entire school's teachers and students would be present. I couldn't help but feel nervous. When I thought about the upcoming anniversary celebration, would make mistakes when practicing the piano. A week before the school's anniversary celebration. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by Dongyu's anxious voice. When I opened my eyes, I saw that he was fully dressed and squatting by the bed. Under the moonlight, his eyes were as beautiful and bright as obsidian. "What are you doing?" I rubbed my eyes and muttered, "It's so late and you're still awake? Let's go. I'll take you somewhere." "What place?" He flicked my head. "Don't ask so many questions. Hurry up and get dressed." His mysterious look made me nervous. I hurriedly put on my clothes. He took my hand and tiptoed out of the door. When we left home, the night was dark and there were no stars in the sky. He wheeled his bicycle and drove me all the way to Yi-Gao. When the car stopped at the entrance of Yi-Gao, I couldn't help but be surprised. I asked in surprise, "Why did you bring me here?" "Remember? I've mentioned to you before that there's a beautiful tripod piano in our school's music classroom." I was bewildered. Finally, I understood his intention. "Didn't you want to play the grand piano? Usually, students aren't allowed to touch this piano unless there's a performance. It's inconvenient to have a teacher around during the day. I'll take you here to practice at night." As he spoke, he turned and asked, "Are you sleepy?" "No." I shook my head and asked worriedly, "But the school's music classroom usually locks the doors and windows." Dongyu couldn't help but smile smugly, revealing his snow-white teeth. "It's my turn to be on duty today." I was still puzzled and didn't react. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "There's a window that I secretly left unlocked. Later, I'll climb through the window and open the door for you." I was instantly excited. This fellow was quite clever in his little tricks. But I was still a little worried. Is there no teacher on duty in the school? If they hear the sound of the zither, they'll definitely discover us, right? I've asked around. Usually, the teachers on duty who are in charge of patrolling the building have already returned to the dormitory to rest at this time. Only the security guards are guarding the door at this time. However, the security room and the music room are far apart, so they won't find out. As Dongyu spoke, he led me through the back door of the school. My eyesight is not very good at night and I have night blindness. Dongyu held my hand and we walked in the dark to the music building. I turned around and looked around. In the school, all the lights were turned off. I couldn't even see my fingers in front of me. The empty corridor and the dark doors and windows formed a sharp contrast with the lively scene during the day. I was a little afraid of the dark. I kept feeling that such an environment was too scary. I thought of something terrifying and couldn't help but shudder. I walked even closer to Dongyu. It was said that a person's imagination was the most terrifying thing. Chapter 31:16. I often read horror magazines on the streets. At this moment, when the contents of those ghost stories flooded my mind, I became even more nervous. He sensed my rapid breathing and couldn't help but smile. "Are you that afraid of the dark? Dongyu, do you believe that there are ghosts in this world?" As soon as I asked, I was frightened by my own imagination. A pale ghost face seemed to flash before my eyes. I was so scared that I didn't dare to mention this word again. Dongyu smiled. If I told you that I believe in ghosts in this world, would you be even more afraid? When I heard this, I almost screamed, "Don't scare me. You're clearly scaring yourself." As Dongyu said this, he rubbed my head. Alright, don't scare yourself. If there really is a ghost, I'll definitely leave you behind and run. I panicked even more and wanted to cry. Let's not talk about this anymore. Stop, stop. He was amused by me and didn't mention it again. We snuck into the music classroom floor. Dongyu approached the bed and carefully opened the window. He pulled open the curtains and peered inside. The moonlight shone into the music classroom, bright and beautiful. He looked around cautiously, his expression guarded. I leaned against his side warily and looked at the corner of the corridor without blinking. I had a feeling that something would suddenly appear in the next second. I curled up into a small ball and carefully tugged at his sleeve. Brother, are you sure it's okay? Yes. The teacher on duty should have returned to the dormitory to rest. There's no one in the music building, Dongyu said in a low voice. Dongyu said in a low voice. Then, he shot me a look. Wait for me outside the door, okay? I'll climb in and open the door for you. No, I grabbed his sleeve tightly. Are you going to leave me outside alone? I didn't expect you to be so timid. Why? Are you afraid that something will suddenly appear and eat you? Ah, I screamed in fright. Dongyu quickly covered my lips nervously and pressed his finger against them. Idiot. Are you trying to lure the security guards here? Who asked you to scare me? Dongyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't be afraid, okay? Wait for me for a while. I'll be quick. All right then, I compromised a little and nodded obediently. Be careful. Dongyu held onto the edge of the window and leaped onto the windowsill. He nimbly flipped into the classroom. I walked to the door anxiously. I was so nervous that my heart raced. Soon, the classroom door opened from the inside. I squeezed through the gap and saw his bright smile. My heart gradually calmed down. Dongyu closed the door and turned around. I hugged his shoulders excitedly and cheered, "Big brother is the best." Shoo! He was afraid that I would make too much noise, so he flicked my forehead with his finger. Lower your voice. Ouch, it hurts. I covered my forehead and glared at him coquettishly. He exchanged glances with me. Then, he moved to close all the curtains in the music room and turned on a light. The warm light shone on a beautiful and elegant Yamaha tripod piano. Wow! What a beautiful piano! Chapter 31:17. I covered my mouth and sighed in admiration. I circled the piano several times in amazement. This piano fulfilled all my romantic fantasies about music as a young girl. When Dongyu was practicing the zither from a young age, I liked to sit by his side and watch him play the boring music over and over again in a daze. However, I didn't find it boring to practice with him. I liked his hands on the piano keys the most. His fingers were long and slender, and his fingertips were like porcelain. Against the black and white keys, they were extremely beautiful. Every afternoon, the sunlight outside the window would shine in and reflect on his handsome side profile. Against the light, it was quiet and beautiful. I wasn't born with a love for the piano. My obsession with the piano stemmed more from my infatuation with him. He looked at me circling the piano with his hands in his trouser pockets helplessly. I looked up at him and saw a warm and doting smile on his lips. Brother, how much does this piano cost? It was probably because I was touching the piano's frame devoutly like a believer praying. The longing expression on my face was too amusing. He chuckled and then frowned seriously. It's very expensive. I was getting more and more curious. How expensive is it? Dongyu thought for a moment and said, about 200,000 yuan. I was completely stunned. 200,000 yuan. It was an astronomical figure. He saw my eyes widen like copper bells and my expression of disbelief. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This piano is a Yamaha. It's specially made for performance. The sound must be great. When is the school anniversary performance scheduled? In a week. Dongyu frowned. Time is tight. Are you familiar with the tune? I've learned it, but there are some parts where I still need to consolidate the fingering. I was just an amateur at playing the piano. I hadn't practiced since I was a child. When I was young, when Dongyu played the piano, I would sit next to him and practice with him. I liked it the most when he taught me step by step. His gentle eyes made me indulge in it. Where is the problem with the fingering? Dongyu sat on the piano stool and patted it. Come here and sit next to me. Okay. I walked over and sat down. He said, play it for me first. All right. I lowered my head and played seriously. From time to time, he would ask me to stop. He would lower his head and adjust my hand to the correct technique. But unknowingly, my mind was no longer on the piano. Instead, I kept staring at the side of his face, lost in thought. I couldn't help but recall that I had once asked Han Xiao how it felt to like someone. She replied that her heart was beating like thunder when she met him, and her heart was filled with joy. When he touched her, his breathing became hot and he fidgeted. That was liking her. I know, I like him, out of control. Especially when looking at him so calmly, it was as if 10,000 years had passed and time had stopped. He looked up. Halfway through his sentence, he saw me staring at the side of his face. He was stunned. What's wrong? No. Nothing. I retracted my gaze in embarrassment, feeling a little guilty. Dongyu smiled. Okay, let's continue then. Chapter 31:18. He used so much force that even his expression froze. He could clearly feel my trembling fingertips and was shocked beyond words. His palms were also covered in cold sweat and his knuckles were white. I hesitated again and again. Suddenly, I stared straight at him and mustered up my courage to plead, brother, let's always be together, okay? Dongyu was stunned and a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. His eyes met mine briefly and he quickly looked away. He lowered his head and did not say a word. When I saw his silence, it was as if a thorn had pierced my heart. I felt a little suffocated. Brother. I hate it when you're with other girls. I've imagined you dating other girls, hugging, dating, kissing. I can't accept it. It's like the end of the world. Let's be together forever and neither of us will leave. Just like we promised when we were young, let's be together, okay? 100 years, a lifetime together. My tone was humble and pleading. I was flustered and helpless. I was hoping that he would gently pull me into his arms like he did when we were young and promise me, okay, we'll be together forever. But he didn't. He only reached out his other hand with a trembling hand and pried my fingers apart one by one. When he looked up at me, his face was pale and helpless. Be good, stop fooling around, okay? I'm not fooling around. I'm obviously very serious. Can't you tell? Can't you tell? I approached him seriously and said anxiously, I want to be with you forever, brother. Didn't we agree? Shechuan, we're siblings. One day, I'll have a girl I love. She'll become my wife and spend the rest of my life with me. The one who'll be with me forever, is that girl, not you. Do you understand? I don't understand. My face instantly burned as I questioned him, why? Why can't I? When I heard these words coming out of his mouth, it was extremely cruel. My heart ached like a piercing needle and I couldn't see clearly. I clenched my fists tightly. Despair seemed to drown me. I asked, then what did you promise me in the past? Was it a lie? We made a promise. He turned his face away with a complicated expression, lowered his head, and stared straight at the black and white piano keys. He pretended to be calm and said, I promised you that I would be with you for the rest of my life and never leave you, but not in this way. Do you understand? The air suddenly became deathly silent. I saw him frowning. His face was dark and gloomy as if he was trying to avoid me. While I was unconscious, I couldn't help but reach out and clasp his wrist tightly. He turned his head in surprise, but I couldn't control myself and moved closer to him. I held his shoulder and kissed him clumsily. When she was young, she loved to watch those romantic and sweet idol dramas. Every time it was the kissing segment, she would watch the scene of the male and female lead kissing on the TV screen and her heart would beat faster. I followed what I saw on TV and held his face. I gently closed my eyes and traced his thin lips with my lips. Chapter 31:19. There was an inexplicable fragrance on his body. It wasn't the smell of perfume, but the light fragrance of laundry detergent. The moment my lips touched his, my mind went blank. All I knew was that I hugged his shoulders fiercely and deepened the kiss, longing for the warmth of his lips. I had thought that he would struggle and resist, and then push me away forcefully to break this out-of-control situation. But he didn't. I saw him open his eyes in a daze. Many complicated emotions flashed across his face. Then, he closed his eyes subconsciously, his shoulders trembling. I was even more nervous. My eyelashes fluttered, and the corners of my eyes felt sour, as if tears were falling. Perhaps he could sense my despair, but he couldn't help but reach out and try to hug me. I yearned for him. What about him? Did he yearn for me as well? But in the next second, he was stunned and pushed me away forcefully. Caught off guard, my body tilted and I fell onto the piano. His elbow pressed hard against the black and white keys, producing an extremely discordant chord. It was ear-piercing and heavy. I looked up and saw him suddenly turn around. Under the moonlight, his face was a little pale, and he felt ridiculous and shocked. I had never seen him like this before. I stood up awkwardly and helplessly. The corners of my lips twitched, and I said with trembling lips, "Brother, why did you push me away?" He wiped his lips with a blank gaze. There was still the residual warmth of my first kiss there. Dong-yu turned around abruptly and questioned me, ridiculous. In Sichuan, do you know what you're doing? How is it ridiculous? How is it ridiculous? My throat tightened. I got up from the piano stool and walked behind him. I reached out and carefully tugged at the corner of his shirt, as if I had done something wrong when we were young, and guiltily begged for his forgiveness. "Brother, can't I kiss you?" "You can't." Dong-yu shook off my hand uncontrollably and walked to the window. He said in a low voice, "I can't either, why not?" I couldn't help but cry. I said aggrievedly, "I like you, and you like me. Isn't that enough?" I shouted the last sentence with all my might, almost breaking my voice. He suddenly turned around and walked up to me. He held my shoulders tightly. His eyes were bloodshot as he said crazily, "You are my sister and I am your brother. Don't you understand? It's impossible. Do you really not understand?" "Why?" I didn't understand and continued to ask, "I can't do without you. The same blood flows in our bodies. We're brother and sister. If we really get together, it'll be like asterisk asterisk asterisk. Do you understand?" He stared at me as if trying to wake me up. I suddenly laughed, feeling sad. I extended my hand and held his wrist. I placed my hand over his wrist and questioned him, "Is this the reason?" I stared at him with teary eyes and said humbly, "If that's the reason, then I'll cut it open with a knife and let all the blood in my body flow out. Will that do?" "Shut up." Dong-yu turned pale with fright and covered my lips tightly. "You're threatening me, aren't you?" I saw the unconcealed heartache on his face and broke down completely. I threw myself into his arms and cried helplessly. How would I dare to threaten him? Chapter 31:20. But I don't want you to be with another girl. My heart will ache, my heart will ache. Brother, I just like you. There's nothing I can do about it. Wouldn't it be great if I could control it? But there's no way to control liking you. His body stiffened as if he had suddenly run out of energy. His arms fell weakly to his sides. He looked up, wanting to hug me, but he didn't dare to touch me. When I saw his helpless expression, my heart ached. Tears slid into the corners of my lips, bitter and astringent. When I was young, I was so glad that you were my brother. I had the best brother in the world. But now, I don't want you to be my brother at all. Don't cry, okay? Dongyu held my face and gently wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes. Even he didn't notice the heartache in his eyes. When he saw that I was crying, his eyes turned red as well. He had never been good at expressing emotions. Regardless of whether he was happy or sad, he always had a calm and composed expression. He wanted to hug me, but he didn't dare to reach out to touch me. He wanted to hold my hand, but he couldn't muster the courage. He once said that no matter what we faced, we had to have courage and press forward. But when I hugged him like a moth to a flame and said that I liked him, he couldn't muster up the courage to hug me back. Perhaps he understood, better than I did, that some courage was ultimately futile. If you wanted the moon in the sky, you wouldn't necessarily be able to pluck it with courage. Hence, some things were destined to be unattainable. Some love was destined to have no ending. That night, when I returned home, I sat on the back seat of the bicycle. However, instead of wrapping my arms around his waist like before, I gently tugged at the corner of his shirt. The evening breeze was getting stronger, making it difficult for me to open my eyes. I repeatedly thought about what Dongyu had said to me, but I didn't want to take a single word of it to heart. In those few days, Dongyu seemed to have become a little indifferent to me. He had never been so cold to me since I was young. Even when he came to pick me up after school, he was no longer as close to me as he used to be. He also stopped practicing the zither with me. Towards the end, there was a complicated chapter in the middle of Jiangnan that I couldn't master. I had no choice but to ask the teacher to change the song list. I changed it to a song that I was more confident in, Autumn Whisper. I was in a bad mood and didn't know what I had done wrong. Unknowingly, in my apprehension, the school's anniversary soon arrived. The night before, I was so nervous that I tossed and turned in bed. I couldn't sleep. I was looking forward to the school's anniversary celebration, but I was also nervous. The school anniversary was on the weekend. On this day, Second High School was open to the public. Even students from other schools could enter and visit the school. Su Chi said that he would get a bunch of brothers to support me. I was amused when I heard that and asked if Dongyu was coming. He said that Dongyu was not coming because he had something to do. When I heard that, my mood turned gloomy again. So many days had passed, yet he was still avoiding me. Could it be that he was prepared to avoid me for the rest of his life? I was a little afraid that the distance between me and Dongyu would gradually drift apart. But I really didn't know that in this world, he was the only person closest to me in my life. I can lose the world, but I can't lose him. Even if it was the same as before, it would be fine. Chapter 31-21. The students participating in the talent show had to go to the auditorium in advance to get used to the scene. The teachers would pay close attention to how to go on stage, how to introduce themselves, and even how to smile in front of the camera. Only then did I realize that there would be a video recording of the entire event. This made me even more nervous. At 4 in the afternoon, I stood in the magnificent auditorium and saw that the students had slowly entered. The art teacher had put on some light makeup for me. To go on stage, I wore the prettiest dress in my closet. As the opening song, I was in charge of taking the lead. Just as the performance was about to begin, I heard someone calling my name. When I turned around, I saw Su Chi waving at me from the first row. I immediately saw the person standing beside him, looking at me silently. When Dongyu saw me, he suddenly stood up and stared at me nervously with anticipation in his eyes. Our eyes met briefly. Before I could say anything, the art teacher hurriedly pulled me over and said, "Xiaochuan, they're announcing. It'll be your turn soon." I nodded and hurried to the back of the stage. It wasn't until the host called my name that I finally reacted. The teacher was hurrying me and using the last few seconds to remind me. The most he said was nothing more than to tell me not to be nervous and to relax. When I walked onto the stage, it was pitch black below. Clap, clap. The stage lights fell at my feet. At that moment, I was surrounded by a blazing white light. The whole world was barren. I tensed up and hugged the microphone helplessly. I looked around but couldn't see anything. Finally, at the front of the stage, I saw him. His figure was against the light and I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew it had to be him. Hello, everyone. I'm Ian Sichuan from Year 2 Class 1. Faye. I'm very honored to be on this stage. Next, I guessed that the art teacher, who was standing behind the scenes and staring at the stage, must be pounding his chest and stamping his feet in anger. Then he desperately lowered his voice and said, "Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous." But I couldn't hear or see anything. My heart was so nervous that it felt like it was about to jump out of my throat. I pressed my chest, and finally, after calming down a little, I slowly said, "Hello everyone, I am Ian Sichuan from the first class of the second year. I am very honored to be able to step on this beautiful stage. Next, I will be singing a piano piece, Autumn Whisper." The audience applauded. I turned around and gently covered my rapidly beating chest. I slowly walked to the tripod piano. When I sat down, my fingers accidentally touched the piano keys. Along with the microphone, the wrong syllable played a discordant melody. I frowned and suddenly took a deep breath. Once again, I gently stroked the piano keys. I imagined Dongyu sitting beside me. It was as if my nervous soul had finally been released. My 10 fingers formed a circle, and then, the syllables flowed from my fingertips like flowing water. Smooth, soothing, tactful. Relatively speaking, the technique of this song was more difficult than that of Jiangnan. However, the advantage was that I had practiced this song for an entire year. After a little consolidation, I was so proficient that it was as if I had become one with the zither. Chapter 31:22. I immediately stood up. Below the stage, Dongyu suddenly walked onto the stage. Amidst the applause and cheers, he pulled me tightly into his arms. At that time, I felt that even with so many people in the auditorium and the surging applause, it couldn't compare to the warmth of his hug. After the performance, I was about to pack my things and go back with Dongyu. Dongyu and Su Chi were waiting for me at the school gate. I thought that perhaps this celebration would be the best time for me to reconcile with Dongyu. Just as I reached the door, I saw Su Chi waving at me. I walked over with a smile, only to see a few of my classmates walking towards me. When they saw me, they called out to me excitedly. "Sichuan. Was that your boyfriend who hugged you on stage just now?" I was stunned. I followed their gazes and looked at Dongyu, only to hear them whispering excitedly, "So handsome. Sichuan, what's your boyfriend's name?" Su Chi heard their discussion and immediately walked over. He said unhappily, "You guys seem to have misunderstood something, right? His name is Ian Dongyu. He's not Ian Sichuan's boyfriend. They're siblings, can't you tell?" Bah. I thought he was Ian Sichuan's boyfriend. So they're siblings. Haha. Sichuan, don't mind it. When Dongyu heard this, he turned his face away expressionlessly. I didn't feel good when I heard this. I didn't know what Dongyu was thinking. However, on the way home, Su Chi was chatting and laughing, but he walked to the side without saying a word. Even when we got home, he didn't interact much with me. Instead, he returned to his room and locked the door. I stood outside his room in a daze for a long time before returning to my room in a daze. I originally hoped that as time passed, the tense relationship between us would be eased. However, time didn't bring about much change in our tense relationship. Instead, it brought about an unfamiliar girl. The first time I met that girl was on Dongyu's 16th birthday. That winter break, the weather was especially cold, so cold that it could freeze a person's heartbeat. At that time, people would usually book a table for their birthdays and invite a few good friends and classmates. After the meal, they would go to karaoke. Most of the time, their parents would be there on that day. They were more indulgent, so they could always go home very late. Dongyu's birthdays had always been celebrated at home because he didn't like too many people and lively environments. Dongyu said that he wanted to eat hot pot at home for his birthday. Early in the morning, I excitedly got out of bed and found the piggy bank on the desk. I smashed it and picked up the change one by one. There were even 2 10-kwai notes. I thought to myself that the pocket money I saved up for a year was finally going to be put to good use. When I was young, I always forgot to give Dongyu a present for his birthday. In my eyes, birthdays were meaningful as long as the family was together. However, after entering junior high school, the concept of birthday gifts gradually became clearer. After lunch, I took a bag of change and ran to the cake shop. I ordered a 10-inch birthday cake and repeatedly reminded them to write, "Happy Birthday to Dongyu," on it. I wasn't in a hurry to leave the shop. I waited for the whole afternoon until the cake was ready. I counted the candles and took the cake home. Chapter 31:23. I had never seen this girl before. She was thin and tall, with a delicate face and a sweet smile. She was wearing a pure white dress. Dongyu. I ran over and hid the cake behind me. I walked up to him and asked curiously, "Who is she?" Dongyu glanced at me, his expression inexplicably uneasy. The girl glanced at me and introduced herself graciously. "You're Dongyu's sister, aren't you?" "Yes, I am." "Hello." She smiled and extended her hand to me. "I'm Dongyu's girlfriend. I'm in the same grade as him." "Girlfriend?" I sized her up in shock. It was obvious that I didn't believe her one-sided story. I didn't respond immediately to her outstretched hand. Instead, I stared at her in a daze, at a loss. "Linley, this is my sister. Her name is Shechuan." Dongyu introduced her and then said to me, "Shechuan, this is my girlfriend. Her name is Linley, your girlfriend?" I couldn't believe it, so much so that I looked a little embarrassed. Dongyu's expression turned uneasy when he saw my sorry state. Linley didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, she smiled and said, "Am I not liked by her?" Dongyu smiled. "How can that be? She's just a little shy." "Shy, that's right." I was indeed shy. Especially when it came to this girlfriend of mine, I was caught off guard. Perhaps sensing that the atmosphere was too tense, Dongyu hurriedly said to her, "Let's go upstairs first." Then, he said to me, "Hurry up and go upstairs too. We have to prepare the hot pot. Mom and Dad won't be home tonight. You have to keep this a secret." He raised a finger to his lips and winked at me. I watched in a daze as he went upstairs and stood there motionless. I didn't know why I was so stubborn at that time, standing there foolishly for so long. Perhaps I was thinking that if Dongyu hadn't seen me go upstairs, would he have come down to look for me? He was so meticulous. Would he have been able to tell that I was unhappy? Would he have coaxed me gently like before and then told me that he was lying to me? I stood there foolishly and didn't go upstairs until Suchi arrived. He parked the car and found me standing there motionless. He walked over and patted me on the shoulder. "Why didn't you go upstairs?" At his reminder, I snapped back to reality. I looked up at the sky. Before I knew it, it was already dusk. I stood there foolishly for 2 hours. Seeing that I was still in a daze, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at the cake in my hand, he quickly took it from my hand. Only then did I realize that my fingers were bleeding from the ribbon of the cake. "Let's go upstairs." As Suchi spoke, he reached for my hand. I quickly asked him, "Suchi, does Dongyu have a girlfriend?" Suchi did not look surprised. Instead, he asked matter-of-factly, "Don't you know?" I shook my head and asked him, "How long have you been talking?" "It's been about a month." "Oh," I replied. Only then did I realize why he had been coming home so late after school recently. I couldn't accept such a thing. Chapter 31:24. Suchi took my hand and led me upstairs. When we entered the house, Dongyu was in the kitchen, preparing the ingredients for the hot pot. Originally, I should have been very happy on my birthday. I was famous for my love of hot pot, especially the chicken soup base that Dongyu had concocted. It was delicious. However, standing in the kitchen, I saw that other than Dongyu, the girl was there as well. She stood beside Dongyu and helped him prepare the soup while she was in charge of the ingredients for the hot pot. The two of them were chatting and laughing in a harmonious manner. The kitchen was too small. With the two of us standing there, there was no room for a third person. However, the spot beside Dongyu that used to belong to me was now occupied by another girl. I felt a little suffocated. I placed the cake on the table with a numb expression. Just as I opened it, Linley walked out of the kitchen. When she saw me at the table, she quickly walked over and placed the cake on the sideboard. It's not time to eat the cake yet. The hot pot is almost ready. With that, she busied herself with her work. I looked at her, not knowing what to think. My mind was blank, and many images flashed through my mind. Dongyu had said that sooner or later, he would fall in love with a girl, get to know her, fall in love with her, and spend the rest of his life with her. That person couldn't possibly be me. Then, could she be that girl? So, this was nothing. Ever since the last argument with him in the music room, our relationship had suddenly become a little stiff. He seemed to be deliberately avoiding me. No matter what I said to him, his attitude became much more indifferent than before. He was neither cold nor warm. He must be angry. I wanted to make him happy and try to break the tension between us. I originally thought that this birthday would definitely be able to ease the cold relationship between us a little. But I didn't expect such an accident to happen. Dongyu brought out the hot pot. After the four of us sat down, Suchi looked around and asked curiously, "Is it just the four of us?" "Yes." Dongyu nodded. "I don't like too many people." "I know you. You don't like noisy environments. It's good that the four of us are here. It's not bad to have a quiet birthday." Suchi clapped his hands. "Then let's dig in." Linley stood up and poured drinks for us. I sat in my seat with a numb expression. I didn't know what to think as I watched Linley put the ingredients into the pot and take them out one after another. She was a girl who knew how to take care of people. She took the initiative to pick up the ingredients for Dongyu. Seeing that I didn't move my chopsticks, she picked up a piece of beef for me and asked with a smile, "Why aren't you eating?" "Oh." I quickly picked up my chopsticks and looked at the hot pot. The steam blew into my eyes, and I couldn't see clearly. "It's so hot." I rubbed my eyes, blinked, and forced a smile. Dongyu suddenly looked up at me. However, he quickly turned around and smiled at Linley. I didn't know what he was saying. I found that my ears were suddenly not working properly. I could not hear what he was saying. The hot pot was quickly scooped clean. Suchi clutched her stomach and slumped into a chair, crying out, "I'm full." I quickly said, "I haven't eaten the cake yet." Linley also said, "I'm full too." What to do? "I can't eat anymore." Suchi said, "At least blow out the candles and make a wish." Chapter 31:25. There's no need to blow out the candles. In any case, a wish won't come true. Linley's expression froze. But people always ask for candles to make wishes on their birthdays. Dongyu said, "My family's tradition is to eat longevity noodles." I see. I suddenly stood up and brought the cake to the table. Then, I arranged the 16 candles in order. I didn't know what I was obsessed with. I lit the candles one by one with a lighter and said to Dongyu, "Dongyu, make a wish. Although your wish might not come true, perhaps it will come true one day." Dongyu looked up and finally looked me in the eye. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "My wish will never come true." My smile froze. Suchi couldn't help but be curious. "What kind of wish is it that even you say will never come true?" "Let me guess." Linley thought for a moment. "Get into a good university?" Suchi said, "With Dongyu's grades, it won't be difficult for him to get into a top-notch university." "Is there a need to make a wish?" Linley guessed again. Find a decent job in the future. Su-chi said, if he goes to a good university, will he still have to worry about a job? Lin-li, don't make wild guesses. Dong-yu is always unfathomable. Who knows what he's thinking all day long? I suddenly walked to the switch and turned off the lights. In the dining room, there was only the flickering light of the candles. Against Dong-yu's face, his deep-set features looked inexplicably downcast. Su-chi also said, hurry up and make a wish. Whether it comes true or not, you have to have a wish. Close your eyes. You must be sincere. Only then did Dong-yu close his eyes. 5 seconds later, he blew out the candles with a whoosh. Su-chi walked over and turned on the lights. He looked down and saw me standing there in a daze. He was stunned. What's wrong? Nothing. I regained my spirits and quickly said, let's cut the cake. Dong-yu suddenly stood up. I'm not eating anymore. Lin-li and I are going to the Lantern Festival in the park. Are you guys coming? I realized that the Lantern Festival was approaching. There would be a Lantern Festival in the park. It would be beautiful. I'd always wanted to go with Dong-yu. The night view would be beautiful. But, my gaze fell on Lin-li with a complicated expression. Su-chi did not think much of it. Lantern Festival? What's so interesting about the Lantern Festival? Today is your birthday, let's go sing. I also said, yeah, I want to sing. Lin-li said, I want to go to the Lantern Festival. This opportunity was hard to come by. Normally, there wouldn't be such an opportunity. It was only available during the Lantern Festival. Su-chi, Shechuan, let's go. I said, I don't want to go to the Lantern Fair. I don't want to see them walking hand in hand at the Lantern Fair. Usually, when I was this stubborn, Dong-yu would be the first to compromise and take care of my emotions. However, that night, he did not do so. Instead, he said, Su-chi, accompany her to sing. Lin-li and I are going to the Lantern Festival. We have an appointment. He then said to Lin-li, let's wash the dishes before we go. Lin-li nodded, and the two of them carried the bowls and chopsticks into the kitchen, chatting and laughing as they began to wash the dishes. I suddenly realized that Dong-yu's rare smile was no longer mine. When he looked at me, he no longer had that doting smile. Chapter 31:26. I sat in the dining room and silently watched the two of them wash the dishes in the kitchen. I suddenly remembered that when I was young, I was punished by my mother to do chores. In the kitchen, I would stand on a stool and wash the dishes alone. Dong-yu would run over and join me. Originally, I hated washing dishes. It was so dry and boring. But because of him, I enjoyed the time of washing dishes. Once, when we were fooling around, he accidentally made foam all over my face, and I accidentally ate more than half of it. The soap frothed in the water, and when it entered my mouth, it was bitter and astringent. Because of this bitterness, my face wrinkled. Dong-yu went downstairs and used his remaining pocket money to buy a bottle of Coke. He urged me to drink it. I was forced to drink the whole can of Coke. At the last moment, he asked nervously, how is it? Is it still bitter? I stared at him for a long time before I suddenly opened my mouth and let out a loud burp. He was scared out of his wits, but when he saw me giggle foolishly, he leaned forward and sniffed in all seriousness. It smells like detergent. I was so angry that I chased after him. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, would I have eaten the foam? He avoided me and teased me, who asked you to be so stupid? Little fool. Little fool. Don't call me little fool again. Little fool. The images gradually overlapped. I snapped out of my thoughts and saw that Dong-yu and Lin-li had already set the table. They walked out, picked up their coats, and were about to leave. I asked cautiously behind him, are you really not going to eat the cake? Dong-yu didn't turn around. He only said lightly, I told you, I don't like cake. With that, he took Lin-li's hand and left. The door closed with a bang, leaving Su-chi and me standing there. My eyes reddened with grievance. I walked up to the table and looked at the cake. On it was written, "Happy birthday to Dongyu." Now that I thought about it, it was somewhat ironic. "This cake is very expensive," I burst into tears. "I saved up a year's worth of pocket money to buy this cake. Why did he say that he doesn't like cake? Is it because the cake is not good?" When Su Chi saw that I was crying, he immediately panicked. He walked over and quickly comforted me. "Why are you crying? Just ignore him. He doesn't like it, but I do." Then, he pulled me to sit down and divided the cake. Then, he picked up a fork and started eating. "Delicious." As he spoke, he looked at me. My hand that was holding the cake didn't move at all. My tears were dripping onto the cake. He didn't know what to do, so he came over and hugged my shoulders. "Do you know that I'm most afraid of you crying? Whenever you cry, I'm always at a loss. Tell me, what should I do with you?" He squatted in front of me and coaxed me. "What do I have to do to stop you from crying?" "Su Chi," my mouth trembled, and my voice was as light as a feather. "Take me to sing." Su Chi was stunned, but nodded without hesitation. At that time, karaoke was a very trendy thing to do. For those of us who were studying at the time, karaoke rooms were very expensive. Just a private room alone cost more than 200 yuan. Some of the better ones cost more than 500 yuan. Chapter 31:27. It was also because of Su Chi that I stepped into a karaoke room for the first time in my life. On Dongyu's birthday night, it was the second time. Compared to the nervousness of the first time, sitting in the karaoke room with Su Chi, I actually felt like an old man. I ordered a lot of songs, most of which were popular at the time. At that time, Jay Cho and Lin Junjia's songs were popular. I ordered "I Still Miss Her" and held the microphone as I sang. Tears drown me, who should be sad, who let go of this relationship. I finally understand promises that can't be kept become shackles. Happiness is always in short supply in reality. Please tell her I don't love her. Smiling sadly, I punish myself. Want to stop all this struggle, harden my heart. Tell a heartfelt lie. Don't tell her I still miss her. Hate is easier to let go than love. When tears clog my chest, just let silence replace all the answers. This song existed in Dongyu's MP3 player for a long time. At that time, I didn't understand why he liked this song. When I first heard it, the melody was nice and the lyrics were sad and beautiful. I was addicted to it and collected many of Lin Junjia's songs. I also became Lin Junjia's fan. However, after listening to so many songs, this was the only one I liked. I never got tired of listening to it. I don't love, I don't hurt, I don't understand. My heart has long been hollowed out, but my words are insincere. Please tell her I don't love her. Smiling sadly, I punish myself. Want to stop all this struggle, harden my heart. Tell a heartfelt lie. Don't tell her I still miss her. Hate is easier to let go than love. When tears clog my chest, just let silence replace all the answers. After singing this song, I suddenly felt that every word in the lyrics was almost heart-wrenching. I felt a sharp pain in my heart. I picked up a can of beer, pulled the tab, and took a big gulp. Su Chi looked at me silently. Perhaps he could tell that something was wrong with my mood today, but he couldn't understand my sadness. For a moment, he just sat silently beside me and put his arm around my shoulder. "Ignore them," I said to him. "Let's sing our song." Su Chi said, "Shechuan, what's wrong? You drank so much, are you okay? What's this bit of wine?" As I spoke, I took another sip. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He pressed his hand against mine to stop me. "Stop drinking. Are you here to sing or to drink? You ordered so many drinks. Isn't it a waste if you don't drink them? You don't have to finish everything you ordered." I put my arms around his shoulders without any explanation. At that moment, my head started to feel groggy because of the alcohol. I leaned very close to him. Leaning close to his face, I smiled and said, "Sing with me, okay?" My breath reeked of alcohol. "Okay. I heard that you sing very well. Sing a song for me." Su Chi smiled and walked to the music machine. He chose a song. Perhaps he guessed that I liked Lin Junjia's songs, so he chose I really want to love her. It's raining. He's holding an umbrella beside you. But I wasn't happy. Because the smile on his face was very forced. I really want to love her. But the eyes lie, it's easier to keep it a secret. Lest our feelings become complicated. I really want to love her. But reason quarrels. Is it possible to quit? Who can give me a good answer? If I can't bear to, if this goes on, we're all victims. I really want to love her. But the eyes lie. It's easier to hide. Lest our feelings become responsible. I really want to love her. But reason quarrels. Is it possible to quit? Chapter 31:28. When love is on the verge of danger, we'll both be scarred, we'll both suffer unspeakably. I really want to love her, but the eyes are lying. It's easier to hide so as not to complicate my feelings. I really want to love her, but reason is arguing. Is it possible to withdraw? Who can give me a good answer? Oh, love teaches us that we can't let go. Love teaches us that we can't let go. I drank my beer in silence, but the beer that had gone into my mouth seemed to have gone into my eyes. My vision gradually became blurry and hazy, and I almost couldn't see clearly. I quickly rubbed my eyes and gulped down one can after another. Su Chi was a little angry. He snatched the beer from my hand and said to me in an angry tone that he had never used before, "You can't drink anymore." I said, "I want to drink more." I was sad. My heart felt like it was being blocked by something. I couldn't swallow or spit it out. I wondered if I would feel better if I got drunk. Even if it was just for one night, it would save me one night of suffering. I finally understood why some people liked to drink when they were sad. It wasn't because they were pretentious, but because it could cover up some pain and numb it appropriately. Although the pain would probably become clear again tomorrow, at least it would be better to have a few seconds less of suffering. Perhaps I had drunk too much, but I felt my stomach churn. I rushed to the bathroom, held the basin, and retched, but nothing came out. Su Chi walked over with the green tea. He unscrewed the lid and handed it to me. He said helplessly, "Don't drink anymore. If you drink anymore, you'll really get drunk. It's not good at all when you're drunk." I took the green tea and drank half the bottle. My body swayed slightly, but my mind slowly cleared. I looked up at him. Perhaps he saw the bloodshot eyes and red and swollen eyelids, and was shocked. "Sichuan, something's wrong with you today." I suddenly hugged him tightly. A crazy thought flashed through my mind. Because I had taken the initiative to hug him, Su Chi's body stiffened. He stared at me blankly, probably unable to tell if this hug was due to the alcohol or if it was because he had lost control of his emotions. However, the next second, I did something even crazier. I held his face in my hands and kissed his lips softly. Leaving his lips, I looked at him seriously. Seeing that he was still in shock, I smiled with tears in my eyes and asked calmly, "Su Chi, don't you like me?" Su Chi nodded. "I've liked you for so long. Do you still have doubts? Then let's go out, what do you think?" As soon as I finished speaking, Su Chi was stunned for about 5 seconds before a surprised smile appeared on his face. "You finally agreed to go out with me?" He looked at me seriously. "Sichuan, are you joking? Or was it because he was drunk that he spoke nonsense? Will you regret it tomorrow?" "No, I promise to date you." Su Chi smiled brightly and hugged me tightly. Then, he whispered into my ear, "Little fool, do you like me too?" I said calmly, "No. I don't like you." Su Chi was stunned when he heard this. He looked at me again with a puzzled expression on his handsome face. Chapter 31:29. I'm a slow person, and it's hard for me to like someone. But since you've been chasing me for so long, I've decided to try dating you. Although I was smiling, I was begging in my heart. "Su Chi, please, let me fall in love with you. Let me fall in love with you without hesitation. Let me fall in love with you regardless of my own safety. Let me like you, just like how I like Dongyu. I want to, like you too." Su Chi was silent for a few seconds. I wondered if he was starting to feel troubled, so I said, will it be too much? If it's too much, then forget it. With that, I turned around to leave. Su-chi hugged me nervously from behind and quickly said, "No." "What?" He turned me around and caressed my face, smiling brightly. "Even if there's only a little hope, I won't give up. Szechuan, be my girlfriend." Crying and laughing, I promised him. I was also serious, really serious about cooperating with him. He couldn't sense my other emotions. He seemed inexplicably excited and immersed in joy. He held my face and asked with a smile, "Then can I kiss my girlfriend now?" Unlike his domineering attitude when we first met, he was actually asking for my opinion. I looked into his eyes and felt that they were exceptionally beautiful, like black jade agate. At this moment, they were so affectionate that it felt like they were sucking my soul away. I didn't dare to look him in the eye. Blushing, I lowered my head and pursed my lips. I nodded gently and smiled faintly. In the next second, he moved closer to me and kissed me on the lips. He was very careful, as if he was treating a precious treasure. He lifted my chin, leaned down, and kissed me. I responded obediently, like a pious student, kissing him the way he kissed me. But the deeper he kissed me, the more my heart beat like a stagnant pool. There were no ripples, no splashes. It was as if my heart was so quiet that there was no echo. His lips were soft and warm, different from Dongyu's. Dongyu's lips were thin and slightly cold. One was passionate like fire. The other was as indifferent as ice. But the feeling it gave off was different after all. Su-chi kissed me, but I didn't feel anything special. My heart didn't seem to be beating too fast either. I couldn't help but recall the scene of me and Dongyu kissing. In the music classroom, in the small forest at the bonfire party, we tasted each other's lips. At that time, our heartbeat felt like it was about to burst my eardrums. At that time, my heart was beating as fast as thunder. It was different. I almost couldn't tell which kiss was what a relationship should be like, and which heartbeat was the rhythm of a relationship. I only knew that I was responding to him seriously, but my heart was so desperate that it was about to collapse. What kind of feeling was a kiss supposed to feel? After becoming Su-chi's girlfriend, her life turned upside down. Overnight, everyone in the school seemed to know about our relationship. Su-chi couldn't wait to tell the world about it. The next day, the news spread throughout the school. Everyone knew that I had become Su-chi's girlfriend. Sitting in the classroom and walking on the field, I could feel the probing, envy, jealousy, and scrutiny in their eyes when they landed on me. The name Su-chi could be said to be an influential figure. Chapter 3130. As a result, my popularity in class was already very poor. As a result, no one dared to approach me. The boys didn't dare to approach me to avoid arousing suspicion. Some of the girls distanced themselves from me. Some probably felt that it was ridiculous and unorthodox to be in a relationship in junior high. Some felt that I had tarnished Su-chi's name and wasn't worthy of being friends with them. But I didn't care. At that time, I hoped that Su-chi would be my salvation. I hoped that he could lead me out of a vicious circle. I hoped that he could take me away from the world of despair that Dongyu had brought me. I wanted to love him so much. I wanted to fall uncontrollably in love with this sunny and handsome boy. Then, with him, I could confidently appear in front of Dongyu and say with a smile, "Brother, I'm in love." This was my boyfriend. Everyone in school knew that Su-chi and I were in a relationship, and Dongyu was no exception. Hence, that night after school, when I walked to the school gate, I didn't see Su-chi. Instead, I saw Dongyu with a livid expression. He was carrying his school bag and his clothes were disheveled. His originally docile black hair was rebelliously covering his eyes. There were obvious bruises on his face. They weren't obvious, but if you looked closely, you could tell that he had been in a fight. I was a little surprised and walked over. Just as I was about to ask him if he had been in a fight, he suddenly grabbed my wrist and questioned me, "Is it true that you're dating Su-chi?" "Yes," I replied, pretending to be relaxed. "So you found out. Did he force himself on you?" Dongyu looked very angry, which made me even more flustered. I didn't know why he was so angry. Shouldn't he be happy? He had finally gotten rid of me and didn't have to be pestered by me anymore. Shouldn't he be happy? I smiled calmly and said, I confessed to him last night. Coincidentally, he's liked me for a long time. It was consensual. No one forced anyone. Are you crazy? Dongyu said angrily, I thought you treated Su-chi as your brother. You're still in junior high. Do you know what kind of guy Su-chi is? You can be friends, but dating is another matter. I know. He's tall, handsome, bright, and popular. Moreover, he's very loyal. Most importantly, he treats me very well. He'll definitely be a very good boyfriend. Dongyu was obviously infuriated by my long speech. He ruffled his hair anxiously and frowned. Suddenly, he glared at me again. Did you guys kiss? I nodded. His gaze froze for a moment before he continued, both of you. Both of you have other intimate relations. Halfway through his question, he felt uneasy and didn't ask any further. I felt even more embarrassed. My face was hot because I knew what he wanted to ask. To put it bluntly, he wanted to ask if Dongyu and I had slept together. At that time, I didn't know what kind of purpose I had, but I asked numbly, what if I said yes? No. Dongyu lost control of himself and asked coldly, is it to take revenge on me? Revenge? Why should I take revenge on you? It took me a few seconds to react. Oh, I said with a chuckle. Do you think I'm mad at you for finding a girlfriend? I smiled and said, don't let your imagination run wild. No. With that, I turned my head and wanted to leave. I was afraid that if I faced him again, my eyes would sting. Chapter 31:31. He turned around, got his bicycle, and caught up with me. He grabbed the strap of my bag and said, get in. I said a little angrily, I'll walk back by myself. Xiaochuan, get in. Dongyu seemed very persistent. Don't make me lose my temper. When I heard this, I felt even more upset. Lose his temper? What right did he have to be angry? Did I do something wrong? Why was he allowed to have a girlfriend, while I had to get his consent and approval to date other boys? Why? I felt indignant and kept my head turned away from him. He was about to say something again when I saw Su-chi approaching me on his bicycle. He also saw Dongyu. As if on purpose, he didn't stop until he was beside me. The wheels of the bicycle were pressed against Dongyu's bicycle. It was more like a confrontation. When Dongyu saw him, his expression turned even uglier. Get lost. Su-chi ignored him and said to me, get in. Dongyu said angrily, Su-chi, have you forgotten what I warned you? Before he could finish, I put my bag in Su-chi's basket and got into the back seat. I hugged his waist, ignoring Dongyu's anger, and said to Su-chi, I want a soda. All right, I'll treat you. As Su-chi spoke, he waited for Dongyu. Under his cold gaze, Su-chi turned the bicycle around and drove me away. I didn't look back. Dongyu didn't chase after us either. He must be disappointed in me, I thought. That night, after coming out of the karaoke room, Su-chi sent me home. Before he left, he grabbed the back of my hand and pulled me to him. He couldn't seem to hide the smile on his face. You're leaving just like that? Aren't you going to say anything? I asked, what do you mean? Su-chi scratched the bridge of my nose. Aren't you going to give me a kiss? My face immediately burned. I turned around shyly, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone standing on my balcony. I couldn't help but look up and catch a glimpse of the figure leaning against the balcony, looking downstairs. The night was too dark, so I couldn't see him clearly, but I could guess his identity. I bit my lip and suddenly turned around to look at Su-chi. Su-chi's initially disappointed face was instantly revived when I turned around. I scolded, idiot. Then, she approached him, stood on her tiptoes, put her arms around his shoulders, and gave him a kiss. He's too tall. Compared to his height of 1. 8 meters, I'm 1.6 meters. I do seem a little petite and dainty. After Su-chi left, I turned around, but he was no longer on the balcony. After returning home, I passed by Dong-yu's room and stopped in my tracks. I suddenly came to my senses. My actions just now were terrible. I don't know what I'm trying to do, who I'm trying to provoke, and what's the point. I walked to the balcony again and stood where Dong-yu was standing. From this angle, I could see everything clearly. I just wanted to show that I could do without him. Ever since that incident, Dong-yu and I have distanced ourselves from each other. I didn't know if he was deliberately distancing himself from me or if I was deliberately distancing myself from him. I laughed at myself more than once. The tacit understanding between brother and sister was vividly displayed at this moment. Chapter 31-32. I followed behind him slowly, trying my best to hide my tracks. It wasn't until they were far away from the school gate that the two of them got closer. Sometimes, Lin-Li would take his hand and smile brightly at him. Dong-yu would look at her gently, just like how he used to stand beside me and gaze at me. Sometimes, Dong-yu would gently hug her shoulders. Occasionally, the two of them would play around and do some intimate things. Like a masochist, I witnessed their intimate moments with my own eyes. I often thought that Dong-yu must have hugged her often, held her hand, kissed her, and perhaps even slept with her in the future. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but wonder if they had slept together. Had they done such a thing? I felt that it was a little dirty to think about it like this. However, I couldn't help but think about it. It gave me a splitting headache and a heart-wrenching pain. When I was dating Su-chi, I was really attentive and worked hard to cooperate. I walked with him through the streets that I had once walked with Dong-yu. I went to the ice cream shop, the movie theater, and the library that I had only been to with Dong-yu. I felt like I was copying the shadow of the person in my heart onto Su-chi, but I also felt that it was unfair. But I really didn't know how else I could fall in love with this sunny and handsome boy other than this. But I didn't know how to cut off my feelings for Dong-yu. I had asked Su-chi about this before. I asked him, Su-chi, what if you like someone you shouldn't like? He asked me in return, what do you mean by someone you shouldn't like? It's someone you shouldn't like. It's impossible between you and her. We're destined to never be together. How is that possible? I don't believe that. As long as I like someone, I'll go after them until I get them. Then, what if there's really no way to be together? Impossible. I mustered up my courage and asked, what if that person is your sister? Su-chi looked at me and was stunned for a long time. Then, he suddenly sneered, how is that possible? This is incestuous sex. I'm not a pervert. As soon as he said that, he was stunned for a long time. Then, he looked at me with a meaningful gaze. Perhaps it was from that day onwards that he vaguely sensed the subtle relationship between me and Dong-yu. Hence, he would try